Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the ordinary meeting for the Sunshine Coast Council, January 18, 2024. I welcome all of my councillor colleagues, council executive, council staff, members of the public, those who are joining us via live stream, and start by wishing you all a very happy new year. In this quadrennial term of council, it's hard to believe we've into sort of the fourth. Did I say the last OM? My apologies. Anyway, it's great to be here, and I want to wish everyone a happy new year. This is obviously an important meeting for us, as will the next two be in wrapping up this quadrennial term. It's been, an interesting term for us all, I'm sure. I'm going to ask Councillor Cox if he will provide the acknowledgement to the traditional owners, and I'd ask the chamber to be upstanding, please.
The Sunshine Coast Council acknowledge the Kabi Kabi peoples and the Jinnaburra peoples whose lands and waters we all now share. The traditional owners' unique values and ancient and enduring cultures deepen and enrich the lives of our community. The Sunshine Coast has been a place of celebration, abundance, connection and kinship for thousands of years, and we will commit to working in partnership with our traditional owners to continue these practices and support self-determination through economic and community development. We recognise our shared history and will continue to work in partnership to provide a foundation for building a shared future with the Kabi Kabi and Jinnaburra peoples. We pay our respect to the traditional owners of the Sunshine Coast and to their elders past, present, and acknowledge the important role First Nations people continue to play within the Sunshine Coast community. Together, we are all stronger.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Please remain upstanding while I ask Pastor Donnie Johnson from the Kawana Life Church to read the prayer. Thank you, Donnie.
Mr Mayor, a moment of indulgence, if I may. I'm coming to the end of 20 years of ministry at Kawana Life Baptist Church. End of February I finish, and therefore my community work into the greater area of Kawana will come to an end as well. So I just want to say a hearty thanks for 20 years of opportunity to pray in mayoral offices. My first prayer office was in Don Aldis's office back in the Caloundra City Council day, where half of you were included, and then many times in councillors' offices to pray as well. And the incredible honour and privilege to be here with you on a day such as this to pray for you, for your staff, and for our great place where we live. I pay you respect and I thank you very much for these opportunities. Let's pray one last time. Father God, thanks for this opportunity of joining together. I thank you for each of our elected members who represent the wider area of Sunshine Coast. I thank you each and every one for the people in the back rooms who work tirelessly and incredibly and hardly ever get noticed. But thank you for them. I pray for wisdom and discernment. I pray, Lord God, that they would lead with strength and courage and vitality. Lord, as they come to the end of their time in this season, I pray, Lord God, that they would run the race fully and finish it well and with honour. Thank you for them. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Pastor Donnie, thank you very much. Please remain upstanding, councillors, while I update you on the passing of former Councillor Grigger. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the recent passing of former Landsborough Shire Councillor William or Darren Grigger. Born in Maleny, Darren was the Division 1 councillor for the former Landsborough Shire Council from 1979 to 1985, which at the time covered the areas of Witter and Conondale. I've been advised that Darren loved music, the arts, sport and his family. On behalf of the Sunshine Coast community, I pass on our thanks for his service to our community. I'd also like to offer our sincere condolences to Mr Grigger's family and friends during this sad time. Please be seated. I'd like to acknowledge that Councillor Councillor Babarowski, my apologies, is joining us via Teams from the UK. So we thank you, Councillor, for your dedication. Item 4 is the receipt and confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting 14 December 2023. Can I have someone move? Councillor Johnston, thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Dixon, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. I can see Councillor Babarowski as well. That's carried unanimously. There is no mayoral minute. In respect of any conflicts of interest, councillors, I remind you of the requirements of the Local Government Act 2009, which sets out how councillors' conflicts of interest are managed in local government matters. These requirements apply to how we deal with such matters at this meeting. So should there be a conflict that you have, please raise that prior to the item being dealt with. There are no presentations, and our first report is item 8.1, the Mooloolaba Foreshore Revitalisation Stage 2 Central Meeting Place. And I invite Chris Sturgis, Councillor O'Prey. We'll have the presentation first from Mr Sturgis. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors and all. Today's presentation and report for the January 2024 ordinary meeting has been prepared to provide an update on the design, development and construction programming of the Mooloolaba Foreshore Revitalisation Stage 2 Central Meeting Place and Southern Parkland Seawall project. It updates Council on the pressing renewal needs of the Lure with a View structure based on the latest engineering assessments, and advises Council on the proposed establishment of 2 Mooloolaba community reference groups to share information and assist business activation planning. In respect to the master plan, community engagement and delivery sequence, the Placemaking Mooloolaba Master Plan was adopted by Council on 10th of December 2015, providing an overall vision and series of precincts to be revitalised. The Foreshore Revitalisation Project is one of the major outcomes of the master plan, intended to be delivered over several years in multiple stages. The project increases public beachfront parkland, provides enhanced spaces and amenities for community use, and will play an important showcasing role in relation to the 2032 Brisbane Olympic and Paralympic Games. The original master plan delivery strategy envisaged a staged north to south revitalisation program, with stage 1, the Northern Parklands, completed in June 2022. The pressing and now critical asset renewal requirements of the Lure with a View structure have led to the prioritisation of stage 2, the central meeting place, the replacement of the Lure with a View. Following an inclusive 4-phase community engagement process throughout 2022 for the stage 2 central meeting place, there was substantial community support for Concept Blue with a majority vote. Council has subsequently approved an amendment to the adopted master plan to proceed with the community supported concept and referred the project to the Capital Works budget process. From a historical perspective, the community has been extensively engaged on a range of Mooloolaba projects over the past 12 years. This has included the 2012 to 2015 Placemaking Mooloolaba Master. In front of the Surf Club, there is no further width to retreat the seawall under the parklands due to the high volume coastal pathway movements, the width required along the coastal pathway and beside it for user safety, safety of Surf Club craft movements, and width for people to sit, look, relax and watch beach events as spectators. The terrace seawall offers improved access and transition between the beach, parkland, amenities and shops, connecting the beach better to business. The design has been through a very thorough professional design process, including quality assurance checks, safety and design reviews, and has attained the relevant state government approvals. The seawall design has been peer reviewed by an Australian and international expert in coastal engineering with over 30 years of experience. The construction procurement process commenced in September 2023 with a strategy that included 3 phases. Well, it includes 3 phases. Phase 1 is the expression of interest, enabling the shortlisting of suitably qualified and experienced expert contractors. Stage 2, early tender involvement, is workshopping the construction methodology with shortlisted contractors. And Phase 3 is the written tender, including price and non-price criteria based on the design and proposed construction methodology. While the project is currently within a tender probity environment, I can advise the following with respect to the construction contract. There is insufficient time for Phase 3, the tender pricing, to be provided to Council, evaluated and awarded prior to the commencement of the 2024 election caretaker period. The expected value of the contract is beyond the prescribed value limit of $3.7 million for decisions within the caretaker period. The award of a contract for these works can therefore only proceed once the local government election caretaker period concludes in 2024. Authority does exist for the CEO to proceed with the project based on the resolution given at the 25th of January 2023 ordinary meeting. Given the current status of the procurement process and the probity environment that exists, any further discussion regarding contract cost and timing are subject to probity constraints due to that current stage of the process. The currently proposed program of works includes early works, including a beach terrace turnaround, temporary beach access, service locations and temporary footpath adjustments. These are required prior to main contract works commencing. In respect to the main contract works, the aim is for commencement in mid-2024. Seawall construction in front of the surf club is of particular interest, exploring the potential for this section to reopen as soon as possible. Works areas and impacted beach areas would be progressively open to the public when complete and safe, like a typical streetscape project. Approximately 20 beach terrace car parks and 9 motorcycle bays east of the turnaround on Beach Terrace would be permanently removed at the commencement of Stage 2. No decision has been made regarding further beach terrace car park closures in respect to Stage 2 construction. It is intended that exact construction timing and sequencing be determined in consultation with the expert contractor so that it has a strong basis of being achievable given the complex nature of this work. The project team will continue to work with stakeholders and the community to communicate and share information, including and amongst other things, the monthly community updates. Council's currently endorsed 23-24 financial year 10-year capital works program includes a collective total of $16.06 million for Stage 2 works. $7.95 million of additional external funding has been secured from the Australian Government through the National Emergency Management Agency Disaster Ready Fund towards the replacement of the seawall component for improved coastal protection outcomes. It is evident a project of this nature requires a range of measures to assist the community through the construction process, and as such, Council intends to establish 2 community reference groups. These Mooloolaba community reference groups are intended to support the ongoing initiatives from the Placemaking Mooloolaba Master Plan, strengthening the two-way sharing of information between Council and the community. First group is a Mooloolaba Business Activation Group with a focus on local business, including business operators, accommodation providers, landowners, business groups, events and tourism. The other group is the Mooloolaba Stakeholder Interest Group with a focus on local residents, community interest groups in environment, beach, sporting and community facilities. The Mooloolaba Community Reference Group's terms of reference are attached to the report. In respect to the business activation and in preparation for the anticipated mid-2024 construction, Council is implementing a business activation strategy, including an action plan to help assist local businesses to retain and attract locals and visitors to the Mooloolaba precinct throughout Stage 2 construction. The strategy will encompass the area defined by the endorsed 2015 Master Plan. Council has appointed specialist place strategy and activation company Reactivate Consulting to develop the strategy with input from local business and Council. Engagement with the business community will commence in early 2024. A Mooloolaba Place Score assessment has also been commissioned, with face-to-face surveys conducted in December 2023 on Mooloolaba streets. Surveys were seeking customer input on the local user experience and will provide baseline data and strengths and opportunities to feed into the action plan. In summing up, the project is being progressed in line with the pressing need to replace the loo with the view structure, which prioritises public safety. The project is aligned to the approved concept blue design and associated certified and peer-reviewed engineering documentation. The project needs to achieve compliance with the requirements of the $7.95 million federal government grant conditions. The construction methodology, timing and sequencing is intended to be optimal and reliable and dovetail with the business activation strategy, and the community reference groups will further bolster stakeholder communication and assist with business activation respectively. I refer you to the officer recommendation on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, very much. Councillor O'Prey.
Welcome back. I'd like to move 8.1 with an additional point F. If I could get a seconder, please.
Councillor Natoli. Seconding, okay. Do you want to explain?
Yes, Mr Mayor, and through you, and for efficiency, I'll actually speak to the motion and the item F as well, both in the one, if I may. Firstly, congratulations to the staff, to Chris, yourself. Great presentation, very succinct, and there's some very, very clear messages within that, and I appreciate that, and thank you. To Bill Hadrill and his team, to Jamie, the Divisional Councillor, and Joe, Mr Mayor, all the Mooloolaba stakeholders, the community groups, the commercial groups, the environmental groups, the small businesses and the residents, and also a big thank you to the PCG that's involved with all this. Mr Mayor, I'm very happy to see the two reference groups come together on this item. I've got personal experience with this, and I would like to share that very quickly with the council. When we put together the options papers for the Maroochy Rivermouth years ago, whether we were going to go with rock wall or we were going to go with sandbags, we actually got together and got a community reference group together, and it absolutely killed every myth and every misinformation that was out there. All the groups came together, everyone was on the same page, and it worked incredibly well. Now, to my additional F, Mr Mayor, through you again, there's been plenty of questions in the community out there at the moment, and a lot of commentary about this at the moment as well. There's been many contacts made to my office, and I know the Divisional Council's office, from the business groups, the environmental groups, and of course the media. This is a very sensitive project that everyone agrees needs doing, and we've got to get every single element of this right. Mooloolaba, in everyone's opinion, particularly mine, having had tourism on the Sunshine Coast for a long time now, it is the jewel in our crown, and it's a very, very precious part of our real estate of the Sunshine Coast. Mr Mayor, I've spoken with the CEO, the executives, Bill Hadrill, Greg Laverty, the Divisional Councillor on many occasions, to Chris yesterday, to the tourism groups, the retailers, to the surf club at Mooloolaba as well, and also to the wharf businesses and some of the leaseholders down there. I'm pretty much across everybody's opinion on this at the moment, which has brought me to the words that I've got there in F at the moment, which is request the CEO to provide a report to the new council prior to awarding the tender for Mooloolaba Foreshore Revitalisation Project, Stage 2, Central Meeting Place and the Southern Seawall. What's this about? This item F is about bringing a report back to council before the tender is awarded, which will be in the new 2024 council. It allows the tender process to continue as normal, and it will allow the caretaker period to not intimidate the staff or make any actions or any changes to it. So the caretaker period is basically just there in its place. The process can go right through it. It allows for the reference groups that we're talking about here today as well to become established. And I believe all the documentation and all the nominations are ready to go. I think Bill made that very clear to me yesterday, so we could start effectively tomorrow or even this afternoon if this goes through today. Item F also allows our staff to have a clear run at the tender process with no distraction, which does occur, and I would like to make sure they've got a very clear run at all the tender opportunities. It allows the community groups to have confidence, and it will be assuring of them that this is not being rushed, because that's a lot of the commentary that we're hearing. You're rushing it through. Caretaker period, that's a lot of the commentary at the moment. What this does is it allows to take that off. It takes the edge off it. It also allows the new council, the 2024 council, to have a real conversation about it right here in the chamber. And that's something that I think is very, very important to all the communities and this council and the next. And that's prior to the tender being awarded. Mr Mayor, it ticks all the boxes for this council, our staff, our community and the new council. Now, some of the other questions that have come to me about critical dates with bringing a report back to council. I spoke again to Bill yesterday about this, and the questions I raised were, can we bring it to the April meeting, knowing that it's a very short period of time? His answer was, yeah, we probably could, but it would be very, very tight. And I said, what about the May meeting? He said, yes, that can happen. And I said, does the report coming back in May impact our project and the possibility of sending it to a two-season job, two-season construction job, which is critical. We don't want that to happen. We want it to compress and make sure it doesn't hit 2 summer seasons. Now, his answer to that was, it's not likely, but he would have to go through the detail. And just on top of that, there's always the ability for the new council to bring the report to council through a special meeting between the April and the May meeting. And I'm very happy for Bill to confirm that if required. Mr Mayor, in closing, it's my understanding that the CEO cannot and won't award the tender during the caretaker period. It's very clear. In fact, Chris made that very clear, and that's the points that I was referring to before about his succinctness. And it simply can't happen. The CEO will not be awarding the tender and going into the pull the trigger, like everyone's concerned about, during the caretaker period. And that's for a number of reasons. And quite possibly it can come back to council anyway because it goes over budget, particularly, and other special conditions. It can come back to this council, into this chamber. It's highly likely, but it's not certain, that that report will need to come back because, like I said just then, that the budgeting, the special conditions, this item F is actually reassuring the community that we are going to have another conversation about this in the new council. But it's highly likely it's going to come back anyway. The reference groups can happen congruently. So what can happen as we go through this process, the reference groups can actually happen at the same time, and that can start today.
Do you need an extension, councillor?
15 seconds, Mr Mayor. We can get on with this, with the job together. This is about ticking the box and appeasing this council, our staff, our community groups, and the next council. Councillors, I put this motion before you today, and I look forward to the debate and conversation. Thank you.
Can I just ask you a couple of questions? Can you elaborate on what you were referring to about intimidating staff?
I don't think I...
You did.
Did I? I'm sorry, it was mispronounced then if it was intimidation. What was... There's no intimidation of staff, I don't believe, in my notes. I'm sorry.
Well,
Could you give me a reference again? I don't want any intimidation of staff, ever.
okay. Second question is, why would a new council be better placed to carry this forward than the existing council who's been working on it now for several years?
And I understand that, and I'm absolutely 100% on board. I've been on the PCG for a number of years. I've seen it all come out of the ground for the 7 years, as you just said. This is actually about giving the new council a voice as well. It's going to happen anyway, Mr Mayor. I'm just making sure that the reassurance is there for the community, and the commentary that's coming back to me at the moment and to other through the businesses, and I'm sure other councils are getting it as well. They want to make sure that this is not getting rushed and making sure that it's not being rushed through council. The feeling in the community is that this is getting pushed through because of the caretaker period. What this does, it actually takes that away. This will actually be a conversation in this chamber for the new council in 2024.
Okay, thank
Just
you.
on reference to your intimidation, I would absolutely have no intention of ever thinking that the council staff would be intimidated. I must admit that that must have been a pronunciation error if that was the case. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Natoli. Sorry, Councillor Dixon is first. My apologies.
Good morning and thank you. Just 2 questions if I can, one to the CEO through the Mayor. Could I just please get the CEO's understanding of what F actually means? So what report will come to council? What will be in that report? And the second part of that, is it a decision for the next council to proceed with the project? I guess that's the big question mark.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Dixon. My read and the discussion that we've had around this is to bring back a similar report to the report you're seeing today, which is to provide the council with the elements of what has been agreed to in the tender, or what we've been negotiating, not agreed to, for council to understand those terms that we're putting forward. So much the same as you've seen today, it'd be about noting and receiving and understanding. And should council have any questions around that, they would be available. We would be available to answer those questions there.
So if I can just specifically ask, obviously I will speak to this, I'll use that as part of it, Mr Mayor. The feedback from the community is they're wanting, from some elements, the next council to stamp a decision, whether that's to proceed or not to proceed. So the question I'd like to ask specifically is, will this be a decision point for the next council in proceeding with the project, or will the CEO still have the ability to proceed with the tender or the contract anyway? Is this a decision point for the next council to vote on the project moving forward or not?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I guess every paper we bring to council offers that decision of council. It's not necessarily framed in that way. We would be providing the information, but much the same as today, provided that information, any council can bring, or any councillor can bring amendments or changes to what is being presented. So we would hope to be presenting the outcomes from our initial community reference group meetings and the details of any proposed contract. And so that council, whoever is on that council, can make those decisions at the time and offer any changes or requests for the whole council to consider.
Oh, sorry, just one second. I might leave that for you to ask. I'm just noting this for the record, and I understand the CEO's response and I understand the process very well, but I'm clearly hearing today that if I, as a councillor, vote for this here, that the new council will be making a decision on whether or not they proceed with this project. That's clearly what I'm hearing. There'll be no decision of the CEO or council staff to proceed with any contracts being awarded or the project commencing. That will be the next council. That's what I'm reading today, and if councillors vote for this today, that's what will be happening.
Ask of the CEO or one of the officers. So, I mean, I guess what everyone needs to understand is these decisions are not made in isolation. They're over a long period of time, one building on the other, as we move towards the outcome we require. A new council coming in, having to deal with a new budget. The new council may look a lot like the old council. It may not. You run the very real risk, in my view, of this being delayed well beyond any of your aspirations and doing a lot more damage to the businesses in that neck of the woods if more than one summer is taken out, along with the lack of confidence that comes from that. I mean, we made a decision a year ago to proceed with this project, a year ago. You know, I appreciate we're approaching caretaker. However, there's a very real risk of any new council seeing this run well over time. And that'd be something you should consider, that I'm not sure you are considering. Let me go to Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, Chris, can you just explain what the process of consultation with the business community, the businesses, and also the unit owners, unit managers of the accommodation houses in Mooloolaba, can you just explain what council has done to inform them and be able to deal with their issues?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The consultation throughout, I think this, from the start, from the master plan, has included a range of consultation processes targeted at the full spectrum of the community, including business, community and all sorts of stakeholders, which are listed in the report. That's been via project pop-ups on the street, through information drops to businesses. There's been a number of walk-ins and newsletters. There's been our Have Your Say website. There's been a range of protocols that have targeted our full spectrum of community throughout the Mooloolaba precinct over a number of years through a number of processes. So every attempt has been made to contact as many as we can. We've got an extensive stakeholder database where we've tried to capture as many people, businesses and community representatives as possible. We've also interacted with bodies such as the Chamber of Commerce, because sometimes it's difficult for us to get the cut through to all of the different businesses.
That they have asked similar sort of questions about their comfort level. Have you been made aware of that?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I am aware something has arrived, but I haven't had time to look at that in detail.
Okay. So you, you're the manager of this whole project, take full responsibility. Have you taken the opportunity to walk and talk to any of the businesses, especially the like Peninsula and Landmark are at the epicentre of this. Have you had personal discussions or tried to understand what their concerns are?
I haven't personally walked every street and had a discussion with every business.
This assessment determined that the structure has now reached its functional design life. Following the remedial work in 2021 and in late 2023, Council subsequently carried out additional strengthening works to ensure public safety is maintained, noting this is for a limited time under a weekly inspection program. Now, this structure has clearly been identified as past its viable life, needs to be replaced. Now, if you ignore that and you do end up with a failure, and you could end up with a compensation claim if something goes wrong, the lawyers go straight for the records. And if you haven't operated in good faith to your insurers, you can void your insurance. That would mean the ratepayers picking up the whole tab through general revenue. In SCG Consulting Engineers, part of their recommendations, the steel framing elements supporting the deck areas are, as stated, beyond repair. The temporary support struts currently being fixed to the beams, as directed by SCG, are, as stated, temporary measures. We suggest 6 months be considered as temporary. Any use beyond that time frame will require regular inspection and possible further remedial measures implemented. And what are the costs of these to the ratepayer? They're not a bottomless pit. In our previous report, we discussed the possible continued use of the facility. At that time, our opinion was the steel elements could expect an extension to the serviceable life of up to 5 years if maintained by this regular weekly inspection program and patching. The poor state of these elements during our latest visit confirms this opinion is true. They have reached the end of their serviceable life and must be replaced. Temporary band-aid solutions, such as the temporary struts being fixed to these beams, is not a viable solution moving forward. It's very clear. In our previous report, we discussed replacement option in terms of material sections and the like. Those recommendations still remain valid. We believe replacement of the facility would be a good outcome for the community. It would also avoid the design constraints which would result in only partial replacement or establishment chosen as a path forward.
Can I get you an extension, councillor?
Thank you.
Someone to move. Councillor Cox. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Suarez. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Councillor Babrowski.
This is about us moving forward responsibly and delivering these assets in a timely and affordable manner. Any pauses, any hesitation here or delays will increase that risk and increase costs into the future. Now, the community engagement. In 2012-15, more than 3,000 participants took part to establish clear understanding of community values. The plan received a very high level of community support, 82%. In 2019, the detailed design release, the 2019 Mooloolaba Foreshore Revitalisation Project, detailed design phase, which evolved from the master plan, included full media coverage, a launch event, pop-up sessions and a street walk where council handed out project information. This project information release showed the terrace seawall and the southern parklands. This was back in 2019. What are we rushing at the moment? I put to you that's all a complete nonsense. But again, you've got to remember it's election time. In 2021, the Coastal Hazard Adaptation Strategy, extensive community engagement was undertaken, extensive community consultation, in the lead up to Council's 2021 Council Hazard Adaptation Strategy. That strategy, together with the Shoreline Erosion Management Plan, signified that areas of Mooloolaba's foreshore, public land, transport infrastructure and underground services are at significant risk of rising sea levels, cyclones, coastal erosion storm surges and coastal inundation. Remembering the current seawall was built in the 1960s and is clearly reaching the end of its life, but it doesn't meet what the climate change projections coming up are. We're being proactive in dealing with that. And hopefully we get this in place before the 2032 Olympics too. Now in 2022, the central meeting place, as a result of extensive community engagement over numerous stages between April and October 2022, majority of survey respondents agreed on the preferred central meeting place design, which was referred to for consideration in January 2023. In 2023, Stage 2 meeting place in Southern Seawall, project communications released in September 2023 informed the community and key stakeholders of the design outcomes. We haven't rushed into this. Communications have included the presenting of asset renewal requirements for the Loo with the view structure, which is underpinned by the existing ageing for cheap political grandstanding. I want to get on with this today, and I don't see how bringing this forward. I'll finish there, but ask a question of the CEO. If this comes back with the tender, that won't be public. Commercial in confidence, that's all in confidential session. So I don't quite see what F's really achieving. Are we getting on with this or aren't we? And with that, it won't be public anyway, because tenders are not public. Is that correct, Madam CEO?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that would be correct for the elements that are associated with the tender, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you also to Mr Sturgis, Madam CEO. I would like to ask a procedural question first. This recommendation, or this resolution as it is now, if it's voted on and defeated, does that mean that all of points A to F are defeated and in actual fact we finish up with no Mooloolaba Bar Business Association Group or Mooloolaba Bar Stakeholder Interest Group? That's correct? Oh.
Yep.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that is correct, but I would also highlight that we actually have a decision from Council in January 2023 to go forward with this contract and this process. We also, through the PCG, have discussed the establishment of the community reference groups, so our intent would still be to create those and move along with those because they are a current decision of the PCG to establish those.
Right.
It's worth saying also that, you know, somebody could foreshadow that should this be unsuccessful, they would support the officer's recommendation.
But that would have to be foreshadowed prior to the vote.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. I have a couple of questions to the CEO. Madam CEO, is it factual that you had intention of bringing the tender back to Council for a final decision? Or were you going to make that decision on your own, well, with the advice of your officers?
Through you, Mr Mayor. As I stated earlier, we have a decision of Council to move forward on this contract that was done in 2023, in January 2023. The reason that we will not progress it at the moment in caretaker is because, given the value of the contract, it doesn't meet our requirements during caretaker period. So I'm unable to create or sign any tender, and as is the team, during that period. So we won't be doing anything during the caretaker period for that reason. In the new term of Council, like all of you, I can't really forecast what might happen. If any of the councillors wanted to have any conversations about this or ask us to bring a paper to council in the new term, then that's possible too, much the same as this paper was requested to be brought to council in this term. So it is possible for a new council to request that. So I can't really say what we would or wouldn't do in the new term of council, but as it currently stands, we have currently a remit from this council to continue with the tendering and implementation process of this project.
Thank you. Now, if some relevant and valid points were to come from the discussions with the two groups, the community reference groups, will that come back to council if we're going to vary the tender?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Not necessarily. If it's within the scope and scale of what's been approved by council, both within what's been approved in January 2023 and also in the current budget process. There are a number of controls around variations that happen in our contracting process. So those would be managed as per our normal process, and I'm sure Mr Sturgis could talk a bit more to that, as we do with a number of our projects. If we find conditions that are pre-existing that we haven't been aware of, or other things that we make variations to contract. As far as the community reference groups go, part of the activation strategy for the businesses is to really understand and work with the businesses across the whole of Mooloolaba to understand what's going on, and to help as much as we can all do together to provide some good ideas and get things through. I know there's a lot of different questions and other things out there. We haven't seen who will be on the whole community reference group, so we may even see some more points raised as part of that process. And the team, as they normally would do, as we've done in many other stakeholder interest groups or community reference groups, would consider the points raised and would provide their views to the community. Our team would provide and try and prioritise and see what was acceptable in the whole process, contemplating schedule and cost, of course, in the outcomes for the project. I know that doesn't specifically answer your question, but I think we would continue with the PCG, and PCG councillors would absolutely have good view of all of those CRG and Business Advisory Group concerns and considerations.
My next question is, it's been brought up with me that the advisory groups are not happy about maintaining confidentiality, but is it correct that the reason they need to maintain confidentiality is because the tenders and the probity period? Is that correct, or...?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there would be that element if there was tender information that could be shared. We'd have to take a lot of care around that, around the probity environment. I think it's also around making sure that there's sufficient time for them to discuss whatever's talked about through the CRG back through their appropriate channels without it necessarily being, in mainstream community. So it provides time and a process for the intention, which is focus group members to go back to their communities and have discussions with their various members.
Right, so it's predominantly designed to stop individuals from going out from that group and speaking on behalf of that group, basically, until the finalisation of the discussions. There's a concern about an election environment in relation to all of this. Is that right?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we certainly have to consider the election environment, the caretaker period. We will be trying to keep all communications as open and able to be shared as widely as it can. So we will be trying to avoid tying the stakeholder or the community reference groups in knots around confidential material, because the intent is to try and have an open and sharing process. So while it's there in the terms of reference, we'll certainly have an intent that whatever's shared can be shared widely.
Right. So in January 23, the Mooloolaba Business Activation Group. Has that got community involvement, Jason, or was that the business group, or was that a committee, PAG or something or other? Or?
So that, Mr. Mayor. So, sorry.
Well, it says, right here, on January 23, the Mooloolaba Business Activation Group acknowledged council.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple of questions as well, probably following along from Councillor Johnston's line of questioning. In terms of the addition that's been added to this motion, item F, with the report, the report would be the result of the tenders, and a decision, or the decision in the motion, would basically be related to a budget decision. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Not necessarily. If the budget comes within the budget that's already been allocated by council, then we wouldn't be seeking further budget. It would be a report that would come ahead of us awarding, or no recommendation would be provided to me to even sign a tender. And in that instant, it would become immediately part of the budget process that will be very soon in the term of council anyway.
Thank you. I've only just recently returned from leave, and when I saw this item, I kind of questioned why we were even bringing it to council in the first place, because it really was just an update, and wondering what decision is being asked of us as councillors today. The only thing that I could see in terms of decision making was regarding the terms of reference for the two groups, which normally occurs in the PCG. It doesn't normally come to council for that. So firstly, I questioned why we were even discussing this here today in the first place. So that is why I'm querying what the ask would be of us if we brought a report back for the new council. So it's not going to be a budget consideration, it would just be another receive and note, which then goes to Councillor Dixon's line of questioning, is does that then open the door? We've got an endorsed master plan, we've got a way forward. I don't really understand the purpose of bringing a report back for the new term of council if there's no decision making that's going to be aligned with it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report was a request from a councillor, and so, as you know, any councillor can request that a report is brought to council for council to consider. So this report is for noting, largely for council to see and discuss and contemplate what the process is and what we're working through at the moment. I imagine that a future report would be much the same, but it provides an opportunity for council to consider, and it's a new council, so I guess they could consider the process and what had been happening up until now. You're quite right. Once we bring things to council, council can choose to make different decisions along the way with respect to a project. But the purpose of any report that we would bring would just to bring where we've arrived at and the details of the tender prior to its award, and it would be for council to understand that prior to us signing.
Okay, thank you, Madam CEO. I will leave my questioning on the amendment for there at this stage. Just have a couple of questions about the groups themselves. With the membership of the Business Activation Group, I note that there was a point about having VSC direct selection membership. Just a point of clarification, because I wasn't here for the information session. Does that mean that VSC staff would be members of that group, or a VSC appointed business that's a member of VSC appointed to that group?
Through Mr. Mayor, I may need some assistance with that one on exactly who. I think the intention was that based on, I guess, presentations with VSC as the body, the peak body for tourism on the Sunshine Coast here, that they would bring to the table the ability to potentially, go to wider audiences as well with what they could bring to the table. So it was, I think, felt value that they be there to assist business activation for Mooloolaba you know, and in the regional sense for the Sunshine Coast.
Thank you. It was a minor point. Just another point of clarity that's come out of the debate so far. In terms of timing, if we are currently going to go out to continue with the tender process and get the information that's required, and in parallel we could actually establish these two groups at the same time, begin to get feedback from the groups, and that would assist us with that continuing tender process. Is that correct?
The process, I guess, that commenced in September last year and the establishment of everything that's happened after that in terms of the communication of the community, the progression of the tender, the focus groups, the business activation, consultancy and strategy is all designed to be working together so that information can flow back and forth to try and design, I suppose, the construction methodology and interaction between the construction and the business operations and community, you know, around the Mooloolaba and the project site, so that we could take every opportunity out of dovetailing that all together and coming up with, hopefully, the least disruptive and an activated Mooloolaba throughout the construction process.
Thank you. That's all the questions that I have. I'll reserve the right to speak later in the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I too have got a couple of questions, and similarly to Councillor Suarez, where she questioned the sort of the relevance of this report, I shared those same sentiments, but I suppose it is a good way for us to communicate to the community a bit of an update. So my question was in relation to, we went out for community consultation in 2022, and as it's been reported already, we endorsed this 12 months ago, January 2023. Since that particular point in time, I just want to sort of bring back a question in relation to what has actually occurred since that time in terms of the design. Would you be able to just share, I noticed that in your slide there was a couple of things noted about what the community would like to see and how they've been incorporated into this design.
We able to go back in the slide pack? Yep. Yeah, so on slide 2, I think it was, I'll go back.
Specifically the shade.
Yeah, so that slide there includes, and as reported to Council at the January 2023 ordinary meeting, the most significant parts of the feedback from the community were around adding more green through trees, grass, native trees, providing more shade, providing more park furniture, and reducing the seawall encroachment. The design that's progressed since that time has added more green. For instance, there's pockets of planting in the seawall, which is probably a first of its kind to try and soften the seawall and provide shade. I believe there's more shade across the entire design, more trees, more park furniture has gone into the design, and we have, through steepening up the buried component of the lower portion of the seawall, been able to retract the most seawood foundation.
The seawall component. So I was just hoping there might be some sort of diagram, maybe a cross-section or the like, which you would be able to explain to us, maybe the existing...
Is a variable environment in terms of the sand heights, and that's why you can see 3 lines there. When you get high sand levels, the highest astronomical tide is further out towards the ocean. When you get lower sand levels, it's closer to the seawall and the parkland. So there's an average line in the middle, which is the solid blue line. The lower portion of the seawall is buried in normal sand conditions, so that's your everyday sand heights. So that means that there's approximately half the wall, and again, depending on the variability of the season, buried by sand. So by no means is that dotted black line visible in normal conditions. In a heavily eroded state where you've had severe events, yes, it would be, as with what we'd see right now with the current seawall and the rock material that sits below it. In terms of the consultation process, the Have Your Say information did have information on the website to compare the key differences between the different concepts. So concept blue was shown and concept yellow, particularly through the central meeting place zones and the differences in the top of the seawall. And that was, I guess, imperative so that the community could understand what was on offer with the different designs. In terms of the cross-section that you referred to, this is on our website as well. This is a cross-section showing those normal averaged beach sand conditions at the narrowest point in the beach, which is in that zone north of the loo with the view, and showing the sand conditions approximately halfway up the seawall, the terrace seawall. As you can see, the terrace seawall changes from being 900 wide steps in the top half and where the planting is to a steeper section below where it's buried in the sand in normal conditions to try and retreat where that bottom foundation is as landward as possible.
Thanks very much for that explanation. I think that's really important for the community to understand. So just looking at that cross section where the two people are sitting on the seawall, the difference between this particular proposal and the existing seawall would be where that person in the blue is sitting, the wall would just be a little bit more vertical in that for the existing situation. So really the difference between the existing and what's being proposed is predominantly that area between where the two people are sitting, predominantly. Would I be correct in that assertion?
Yes, in normal sand conditions, which we see on the beach, that would be the case, that you would see those wider stairs exposed and able to be used to sit on. The rest in normal conditions.
Yeah, thanks. That was my understanding. I just wanted to make sure that everyone got that clear in their heads. I will reserve my right to speak to this item a bit later, but I would foreshadow that if the motion is defeated, I will flag the original officer's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Can I just also ask a couple of questions? And first of all, I'd say to Chris and the team, notwithstanding Councillor O'Prea's Freudian slip, I'd hate to think that there has been any form of intimidation. Unfortunately,
Sorry, Councillor Babrowski was in the queue. You just missed that.
I'm having a great day, am I? Sorry, Councillor Babrowski. I didn't see you hidden away there. And
Look, thank you very much. Look, I'd just like to make the point that I'm focusing my support of the officer recommendation and of F on the basis that I haven't really heard a lot of objection to the recommendations in terms of the receive of note aspects of it. But what Councillor O'Prea's F has done is introduce an opportunity for what he describes as a conversation, and I think he is experienced enough to understand that conversations can lead to a will to make a decision. I think he's certainly experienced enough to know that. But I'm going to trust the fact that the new council, whoever it's composed of, will be able to look at this extensive process and an evidence-based series of reports with maturity and come to exactly the same conclusion that there is no need to substantially change the decisions. But it also gives the two reference groups that will be formed a similar opportunity to really understand the extensive process and the substantive arguments and engineering that's gone into this. So I'm going to trust that this is not a high risk to the timing, which is absolutely critical. I hope that I'm not being naive and would live to regret this, but I'm going to support Councillor O'Prea's recommendation to allow this conversation, as he describes it, to occur, because I'm going to be confident that it won't result in a substantive change that would put the timing or the scope and scale of this project at risk. So I'm going to support Councillor Craig's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. I'll get back to my point to thank Chris and the team. A lot of work gone into this over a long period of time with as many of the team members here. Notwithstanding Councillor O'Prea's Freudian slip, you know, the threat of intimidation in public life today is considerably higher than it might have once been. And unfortunately, as Councillor Hungerford has highlighted, that tends to be expanded coming into an election. That notwithstanding, we're here in the local seat of democracy, representing the people of the Sunshine Coast to make the best decisions that we can with the best information we have available. There's a couple of things I'd like to pick up on around consultation. There's clearly been, as evidenced in the report, any amount of consultation, but consultation doesn't always deliver success, because someone who disagrees with the outcome of consultation is happy to try and make you believe there wasn't any consultation. I think that's pretty unfair. Chris, you mentioned that the current seawall, which by its nature is sort of flat to the sea, was installed in the 1960s. I was born in 1959, so I was actually around in the 1960s, but I don't remember a lot of it. But clearly there is sufficient expert advice to council around what needs to be done. The federal government, through NEMA, has recognised the importance of the protection of this area and putting up $7.95 million to assist in its redevelopment. The risks of rising sea levels and climate change, I think we generally accept in varying degrees. Councillor Natoli was very interested in the outcome of retailers, and our assets are obviously the beach above the high water mark and the public space above that, some of which currently is used for car parking. For those of you who remember the local area parking plans, the intention was that people would park in the multi-deck car park, of which we spent several $1 million on to benefit that area. Let's think about some specific examples of reality as opposed to fantasy. The reality of the work that our staff did in the development of the Northern Parklands has been outstanding. There were similar people arguing the toss about whether it should be done. Those who believe that that beachfront caravan park that was, you know, the domain of the few, if you like, who managed to be able to book that out year-round, didn't seem to be terribly fair for everybody else. That area today is regarded as one of the most exceptional public areas, public spaces in the country. That was done by our officers with the assistance of the contractors, going through very much the same process we're going through here. So if you really want to deal in the reality, then let's look at our record. And the record is pretty darn good. My understanding is that the business community in Mooloolaba, who had to endure some pain as a consequence of that redevelopment of the Northern Parklands, have benefited greatly from the volume of people that have been brought there to utilise that parklands. Again, that's the reality. That's what we need to be considering. The challenges with probity, and I think might go to one of the questions that Councillor Johnson was raising, or maybe Councillor Suarez. Our record in maintaining probity within this group isn't that great. Isn't that great? So trying to involve a whole lot of other people in a process to get an outcome that's the best outcome we can for the community is not to be recommended. No problems at all with consultation, but when it comes to actually making those critical decisions where probity and honesty and direct dealing is very important, not only for our reputation, but for the finances of our community, that's absolutely critical. So it is difficult to try and share a lot of that detailed information. So, councillors, I can't see what F actually achieves. You know, we're a council, along with the council before us and the one before that, who've been involved in this process so far. The one after us may well get all the pats on the back on the day the ribbons are cut. And wouldn't that be lovely? But along the way, the reality is that you pass it on in good faith to whoever's coming along next. But, you know, you don't play your grand finals at the start of the season, you play them at the end of the season. So the decision we've got to make today, and I understand this has been brought to us through a request from a councillor, I believe should end at E, the original recommendation. So with those few words, thank you, and again, thank you to the staff. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've just got a few more questions before I like to speak to the motion. And I'll just raise the alliance, Councillor Winston, is an alliance of both the community and the business groups in Mooloolaba that have come together to try and work together as a unified group, and that's where the word alliance came from. Just a question to Councillor, through you, Mr Mayor, to Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Hungerford, have you actually been down to the Loo of the View and inspected the underneath part, which is very visible?
Over the years I've been there many times. I do notice depending on the weather conditions we get at the time, you get a heavy low come down the coast and most of the sand goes missing there, and you go up and have a look at it. It's very compromised. It makes sense to me, because it's so low to the beach and it's really at the end of its serviceable life, that we do need to get it up higher. When you take the climate change that's in our adaptation strategy, that is a very sensible move. Otherwise, we're going to spend millions of dollars patching and achieve what at the end of the day will have to be replaced at some stage.
But have you had a look at the works that were recently done by council, and have you taken a builder, a boilermaker, someone with some experience about construction, and asked them of their opinion of the risk, that the imminent risk over the next couple months, let's say May, of it collapsing?
Councillor, I mean, Councillor Natoli, if you're suggesting that everybody should be getting their own builder and boilermaker to give an opinion, I mean, would they come with the appropriate insurance to cover those opinions? I mean, I don't think councillors should be looking any further than the advice that comes from the experts we employ.
Okay. No need for Councillor Hungerford to answer that question. I'll ask through.
We have a report before us at the moment. SEG Consulting Engineers with the photographs of all the failings there. Do you accept that they are very accurate, done by a consulting firm of engineers who are saying these are failing and need replacing? It's the end of its life. Look at the report.
I've read the report. I know that the engineer did not go underneath the actual and had a look at the actual substrate. They haven't gone into the roof, haven't had a look at a lot of things. Yes, some of that is surface, some of it is surface rust, and a lot of work that council's done has actually stabilised it. And honestly, in my opinion, I don't have the same fear as been propagated. So the question I want to ask through you, Mr Mayor, to Chris, is that do you believe, with the work that council's done to stabilise the Loo with a View, if a decision and council couldn't proceed until May, is it imminent that it's likely to collapse? and cause people harm.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Tolley, it's not a decision I can make. I'm not a registered professional engineer of Queensland who can assess and make an opinion on that structure. That is why we've got a structural engineering consultant with those qualifications and professional ability to do that, and I have to trust the reports that they've been provided. It is not my call.
Was it observed over New Year's Eve when the deck was covered completely with the maximum load that could have been on that deck at any one time? Was it observed and was it deemed to be dangerous at that particular time?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to request Scott Taylor, who is our Group Executive of Built Infrastructure, come up and answer this question, as the team did some specific research prior to New Year's Eve. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Through Councillor Natoli, your question was it observed? The Civil Asset Management team responding to the engineering report in November 23 have been reviewing and looking at the deck continuously. We are concerned about public safety, and further to the remediation works of 2021, we did more work to shore it up for the festive season during Christmas and the New Year. Deborah was acting CEO and I went down and actually looked underneath the deck to give ourselves confidence and spoke to a variety of stakeholders to ensure with public safety at the top of mind, we could, with confidence, maintain public safety through that period. We are genuinely concerned that it is beyond repair and at its end of life, as Councillor Ted has already made many comments about. It's a watching brief. We go there every week and do a review. I have been back there since Christmas as well, making sure that we feel that we can provide continuity of service through to the up and coming period of the school. Very close to some parts of it also becoming beyond repair, so it's a decretive component to the asset life. It is imminent that it is at end of a life. There's no question about it.
So the question I want to ask, is it likely from now till maybe May that we're to get that huge load that we got over New Year's Eve on the deck through your observations that you're seeing at the moment?
My watching brief is through the routine inspections is that if at any point in time we're concerned that any additional load on the deck will be a risk to public safety, either on top of the deck or for the variety of people that camp underneath the deck, we'll be forced to close that part of the Lulworth Review in pursuit of public safety. There's no hesitation in the team. So the precondition is that in the monitoring of the maintenance of the structural reinforcement that we did in 2021, as well as the recent work that we did, which is based on structural reinforcement of bridges, it's a watching brief. So given the deterioration, get there, but if today, if that confidence is lost, I have no hesitation in meeting my responsibilities to the community to close the deck.
Thank you. This is a question through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO. The PCG minutes stated that the stakeholder groups would have been established by December. Can you explain why that has not occurred?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the team made best endeavours to do that, and obviously that was the intent. With the focus that has become on this paper and answering a number of community questions that arose through that period, the team have focused and prioritised this instead of the establishment of those CIGs. I think also the consideration of the school holidays being present, sometimes when we go out in December to ask for people to participate, we don't have everybody available on the coast who would like to take up that opportunity. And so also the decision was about when will we get the most engagement and allow people the best opportunity to be part of a CIG so that they can put their hands up and they won't have missed out on the opportunity because they're taking a holiday or having leave or getting children ready to go back to school or whatever those activities are in the whole of January.
Yeah. And just a follow-up question, reactivate the consulting, the company that's been engaged to look at the activation of Mooloolaba, when the report talks early 2024, but when? Do we have an actual date when they're actually starting?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I believe they've been engaged already, but I might get Mr Sturgis to answer that question. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, the company is engaged and they're already doing background work in preparation for the strategy and are very keen to start to meet stakeholders and business to take that to the next stage.
But no idea when they first engage with businesses?
They should start within the next week or two.
So, Mr Mayor, I'd like to now talk on the motion. I just want to take councillors through the last 4 years. When I got elected, the multi-deck car park in Mooloolaba was being constructed, and that went on for quite a considerable period of time. Then we had the building of the Northern Parkland, which wasn't as disruptive as what other construction around Mooloolaba has been, but it certainly had impacts. The widening of Wayland Street from 2 lanes to 4 lanes ended up with major problems over Christmas, where we had to basically keep that road closed, and the impacts on those businesses were quite significant. And then we went on to the next stage of widen Brisbane Road, 4 lanes right up to Mays Canal Bridge. And of course, we had to close Brisbane Road, and again, through major problems with Unity Water, there were massive delays there again through that process and the impacts on the businesses. We've also gone through one of the most incredible periods of the COVID mandate impacts on businesses, which many businesses are still feeling the impacts, owing banks money, landlords money, not knowing what their future is. And then recently, and talking to business people, the impacts of the cost of living increases has led to a reduced trade. And it is worrying. It's a difficult time for people in the hospitality industry, and in particular retailers, and retailers are also experiencing a lot more online sales, which is diverting people away from their businesses. The other impact of COVID has been the most difficult thing for most businesses, being able to keep staff, being able to find staff. It's been really challenging for them. And only this Monday, the Cape Hat Hotel had started construction in Mooloolaba. So that's 4 years. When you think of the construction that has happened and the impacts on businesses in that area, it has been quite an extraordinary amount of impact, construction in that local area. I know that my concern about the businesses led to me making the decision to go to Kingscliff, where a 300-metre seawall was constructed back in 2018. The opportunity to go and talk to the Mayor of Tweed and the group executive that built the construction wall, and it was clear to me that they didn't really have a conversation with their business people. Their project was 8 years after the Cudgeon Surf Club nearly got swallowed up by the ocean. They did some work to be able to stabilise it, but it took 8 years before the state and federal government gave them the $23 million to build this seawall. And most of it is in 3 different stages. But I took the opportunity to go and talk to a lot of the business people in that area. And many of them experienced, in particular with changing to car parking, loss of car parking, a lot of locals didn't come back to that area during that period of time. It took 18 months through that construction. The businesses that fared the best were the coffee shops. They got trade from tradies. They were down roughly about 15%. And then majority of the retailers suffered losses over that period of nearly 30%. So in mind of everything that's happened with the businesses in Mooloolaba, I have been very concerned about what the likely impact of this construction over the next period of time. Once we start, then that will be a significant thing for those business people. And when wanted to bring a notice of motion at the last meeting and negotiated with the CEO to bring this report to this council. My main concern in that notice of motion was about the issues that the key stakeholders, the Alliance, had brought to, and at that stage, I had a letter from every one of them saying they were not comfortable with council proceeding because they still had too much unknown about this project and they wanted questions answered. So the one thing that I expected to see in this report that came today was to actually understand what those impacts, unlikely impacts, were going to be on businesses and how we were going to be able to mitigate that. And I also want to know whether we had more work to do to be able to deal with the key stakeholders, the Alliance's concerns. And right up to date, they, at this stage, are still in the dark.
Can I get you an extension, Councillor? Councillor Terry, have a seconder, please. Councillor Dixon, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Please carry on.
Okay. So, every business owner, every landlord, every unit manager, every unit owner has invested money in their stake in Mooloolaba. In many cases, banks will not lend money unless a business owner can produce a business plan. The business plan analyses every risk identified. They can only do this if the information and the data given is accurate. Those categories is anyone's guess. Without pausing to ensure these businesses have all the information and are provided the true impacts on their businesses, they will feel like they are being kept in the dark. We owe it to these businesses to make sure we do all we can to prepare them for the very tough road ahead. Like any scared child, a parent will reach out to them and hold their hand. And this council needs to reach out and hold the hands of these businesses and not let go until we get through to the other end. Everything we do with this project should have the interests of the business owners at heart, and that should be every decision-making process from here on. Councillors, the information and details we require to make good decisions is lacking. When I walked the Esplanade and discussed with the owners and managers about their awareness of the project and how much interaction they've had with council officers, apart from receiving a pamphlet a couple of months ago, there's been no personal interaction. The two major unit towers, Peninsula and Landmark, have not had any interaction. In fact, Scott didn't even know. He heard from Brett from Landmark. Now, I'm very concerned that there's just so many questions. And as a councillor, they were asking me questions I couldn't even answer because I don't have the information. So if I can't answer these questions and feel comfortable, and some of these questions will come through once we get through the probity book, once we know what the methodology is in terms of construction, but there's so much anxiety and stress within this business community. And I think if that isn't something of concern to us, and we shouldn't be trivialising about saying that this is really about politics. It's not. I believe this needs to be left for the new council to decide. Give them all the information they need to be confident that they can proceed and make a well-informed decision. And that is really about proceeding, about the comfort that the business community and that they've got all the processes in place to be able to support them. Councillors, we are making decisions which impact real people. The community and the key stakeholders and the businesses are calling for it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I kind of find it a bit insulting to think that this council can't actually make decisions, effective decisions. Some of the, I suppose, the sentiment that I've heard through some of the community groups is quite frustrating, to say the least. I've been, my previous portfolio before Environment and Livability, which I now hold, was design and placemaking. So I've been on this journey for probably 10 years, and I know that we've got exceptional staff involved. They have engaged a very thorough construction procurement strategy, can't be faulted. Yes, there are some unknowns that will come out as we further progress the phase 3 with the construction strategy, I suppose it would be. So let's have confidence in this council. We've done it many times. The Mayor pointed out the Northern Parklands. We've done projects like the airport runway, $300 million. We've done things like the CBD and the City Hall that we're currently standing in. These are projects that span multiple terms, not just one. And for a new council, when they come in, I'm sure you will all think back to when you first got elected. It is quite an overwhelming period for a newly elected councillor to try and get a hold of things like a $1 billion budget, which you've only got weeks to get your head around before you endorse. To throw in something like this as well, I just find that really, really confusing. That why would you want to do that to a new council that basically hasn't been on the journey like we've been on the journey? I know that the real risks that we face with this project are time delay. We're desperately trying to avoid any delays to this program because it is quite tight. We don't want to have a second summer season impacted. That will be the detriment to the businesses in Mooloolaba, missing out on 2 summer seasons and having this project affected. Please understand the importance of getting in and getting out. The other thing I wanted to just touch on is the additional costs. Any delay to this project will cost our ratepayers money. There is no hesitation in me saying that. You just have to look at the additional information that was provided by our professional staff in relation to the construction costs, the predicted escalations in our construction industry, given the huge pipeline of infrastructure that's due to be delivered in Queensland. On something of this size and this importance, this budget, that will cost our ratepayers millions of dollars if we delay this. So I'm not prepared to put that burden back on my fellow ratepayers, and please consider that strongly with your decision. Not only will it escalate in value, but we keep going back and doing these remedial works, these temporary remedial works on this facility. It's past the end of its useful life. Why keep throwing good money at a bad situation? Please. I also wanted to just touch on something that was in the slide package that we saw in the presentation from Mr. Sturgis. Our investment in Mooloolaba, there's been $85 million in Mooloolaba over the last few years. $85 million. Now, 65 of that has come from council, and the balance of the 20 came from the state and the federal government. We are investing heavily into Mooloolaba because we see it as the jewel in the crown. Keep in mind what's coming in 2032. You can't have this site being a construction zone in the lead up to one of the biggest and most important dates in this region's history. I also just want to touch on this design has been peer reviewed by, let me get this correct, I think the gentleman has 30 years experience, International Master of Engineering Science, 30 years in coastal engineering and physical oceanography.
Can I get you an extension, Councillor?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Suarez, Councillor Hungerford, all those in favour? Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you, councillors.
Thanks, Councillor.
So the design review has been peer reviewed and given the tick of approval. We've also achieved our state approvals. So I'm still wondering what the big issue is. And yes, I understand that there are concerns from the Mooloolaba business community. And with the endorsement of those 2 groups, the Business Activation Group and the Mooloolaba Stakeholder Interest Group, I think they will be brought along in the journey and they will be able to give us feedback and the like. And that gives me great confidence having the addition of those 2 groups to really feed in and learn where council is and what we're doing with this particular project. Now, I was down there meeting a journalist because there was some commentary going around on social media about council having no idea what we're doing. And I had to go down and do a story at Mooloolaba with a Channel 7 journalist. That journalist, unfortunately, was held up for about 15, 20 minutes. And in that time that I was waiting, I saw numerous people going up to our project news boards with the QR code and scanning. Now, I saw several people doing this, but I went up and approached a couple and I went, "Oh, are you guys, from this area?" They said no, they were from Wellington, New Zealand, but they come over every year to see Mooloolaba. This is their holiday destination of choice. I got chatting to them and they redevelopment. They were just over the moon. And I thought to myself, geez, it would have been good to have the journalist turn up on time to hear this particular good news story. But as we know, good news doesn't get reported. But as I've mentioned earlier, I won't be supporting this particular item, and I will flag that I will move the original officer's motion or recommendation if this is defeated, because I just have concerns over F and a new council being able to determine this, and especially given those timeframes are so critical, I am super concerned about whether or not there is a time for a report to come to new council and for them to fully understand it. So I hope that explains, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. Cox, go to Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I have a couple of additional questions. Just because we've got F on there, I was happy with the original motion. Through to the CEO, should this motion be defeated and the original motion come back onto the table, would a new council, when they're sworn in April 2024, would a new council be able to request of you to have this brought back as a report? Would there be time for a report to be made for May ordinary meeting?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes.
Thank you. That kind of alleviates a bit of questioning for myself. I absolutely understand what it's like to be a new councillor, to come into a council with all those past decisions made by others. It does take a bit of time to get your head around it, but should the new council be of a mind to want to true meaning or the true desire of why you want this brought here to council is not really coming to the surface. Councillor Natoli stated that he would want this to come back to council for a decision. And my question is, what decision? To decide what?
To decide whether the issues that the Alliance, the stakeholders and the business community are ready to proceed with this project. That's all.
Thank you.
That's what it was.
So the decision is solely about the businesses of Mooloolaba, and the decision is not at all about squashing this project and not proceeding in the future. You said that earlier. I have one more question for you. Does Councillor Natoli accept that the loo with the view is of a condition that can no longer be rectified?
I've had my own engineer, 2 architects, builders give me an opinion, and I have a difference of opinion to what the current. The report itself, if you read the engineering report, doesn't actually say that it can't be repaired.
Can I just get
I just want to point that point. You asked me whether it could. I'm saying the engineering...
No, I asked if you accepted whether or not. So it's a yes or no answer. I asked the question, do you accept that the loo with a view is of a condition that can no longer be rectified? You can just simply answer with a yes or no.
It could be rectified, and it could be refurbished, based on the engineering report's own comments in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Natoli also asked a very unfair question of staff about the load of the Lou with a View and their opinion on this, and could it be that? So I'll ask an unfair question of Councillor Natoli. If he disagrees with the engineer's report and all of the advice that we've been given, is he prepared to accept the risks to people's lives and safety should something happen with the Lou with a View to our general public?
That Lou with a View was to get through to May, knowing what stress loads it's gone through. And remember, we were bought this more than 12 months ago. The CEO said it was that the risk was imminent and saw tape go out. And the fact is that we've had Anzac Day, we've had 2 New Year's Eve that are 2 sessions with fireworks that have had that whole Lou with a View completely covered. I've been there, I've seen it. So the point I'm trying to say is I don't have the same concern that's been expressed about the risks without go and have a look for yourself.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. I think I've heard enough. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll speak to the motion. I absolutely support the right of any councillor to bring any item back to council for a discussion. This report has been an information report. This report has only asked one thing of councillors, and that's about the terms of reference for the community involvement in the project going forward. If business impacts is the main concern here, that's the area that we should be focusing on, not delaying the project. And there's a pathway to do that. There's certainly a pathway to strengthen any interaction with the business community going forward with this project. So I'm not here to prosecute this project again. The seawall at Mooloolaba was identified in the CHAS and specifically aligned to the Mooloolaba Foreshore Revitalisation Project. It was carried unanimously by every single councillor in this room on the 27th of May 2021. The Central Meeting Place Master Plan, with the exception of Councillor Natoli, was also carried by every other councillor at the 25th of January 2023 ordinary meeting. And it was at that meeting that we heard that the community feedback was overwhelmingly in support of option blue. The team have responded to concerns about the seawall extent and retreated it by 1.8 metres. We shouldn't be playing politics with this decision, particularly when they come so close to an election, and I certainly will not be putting people's safety at risk. I stand by these past decisions, and I will continue to stand by the majority of the community who supported this project, and just because they're not in the media and they're not in social media doesn't mean they don't exist. I absolutely support the terms of reference for the community groups in going forward with this project. I won't be supporting the motion in its current form. I will certainly be looking forward to discussing the original motion.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor O'Prey, you have a question?
Very interesting debate and discussion now that's coming up some 2 hours. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions for different individual officers, if I could. Firstly, to the CEO. These are the questions for the community. I'm going to make it really simple. You do not have the ability to make any decisions to pull the trigger, so to speak, during the caretaker period. And again, just a simple yes or no is all I need.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I have no ability to make that decision during caretaker.
Yeah, double negative, I get that. So you won't be pulling the trigger during the caretaker period. Thank you. It's very... I'm not sure who'd ask this question of Mr Mayor, but I'll ask it through you. This is very real that this will come back to council anyway. And the conversations that I've heard, it's whether it's going to be through budget, which was mentioned, through a council call-up, or even maybe, even though notice of motion has been mentioned, there's an opportunity there to bring it forward. So there's a very real chance that it's going to come forward to council. So in the worst case scenario, and I believe that comes to a budget decision, we're going to be in a budget debate and discussion, and we could potentially be talking about this project, and then again, all this erupts again during a budget conversation, that whether or not this is suitable, and have all these same topics that caught up that we've had for the last 2 hours. Is that right? Can that happen in a budget meeting?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I would imagine that in the next term of council that we will have a PCG still, and that we will have, we may not know who is on that PCG at this time, but that PCG will be well informed about the progress and what's required. Like we have now, if PCG members think that it's something that's relevant to the whole of council and any future budget conversations that might need to happen. So whilst I can't forecast or into the future about what conversations may or may not happen in a budget conversation, councillors of the day may even choose to have different projects on their minds at that time as well. So it's a bit hard to answer yes or no to that, but I hope that describes a process that you're all very familiar with today.
Thank you. I get that too, and I just needed to ask that question because that would get messy. The third question is, and is this a fair comment? The ultimate decision for this project is in the council's hands of 2024, because it can come back on any different ways, whether it be through budget, through special conditions or anything. There's a real chance that it could be made in the decision of the next council anyway. I'm only talking about item F here, none of the other stuff, because all the other stuff I've been supportive with the whole thing. So is it fair to say that the new council has got some control, or the control, over this project? Is that a fair comment?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Council always has control over all of the work that we do for council, but I would say that, to say that the next council ultimately has control, I don't know that I would say yes or no to that, but the council at any stage can request more.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I came to this meeting today not sure which way I was going to vote, and I've listened to the debate very closely. I can understand why certain individuals would like to have clause F in there, but I just, in the back of my mind is the constant concern about the fact that if this matter is delayed for, more than a month or so after the election, we are in danger of putting this project over 2 summer seasons, very significantly in danger of it. And if the next council wants to do that, then the next council can bring it up and do it, right? But they will be the ones who accept the consequences to the community and to the business community of it running over 2 summer seasons instead of 1 and a winter season, 2 winter seasons. So I'm not going to vote for the motion as it currently is, because I have some concerns about that aspect, as well as I have concerns about the further blowout in the budget. We've already spent 85 million in Mooloolaba. This is another, top it up to over 100 million. And, my constituents are saying they want more money spent in their area. So, I'm in 2 minds about certain aspects of the whole thing, but I will not be voting for the motion as it currently is. If Councillor Cox puts forward A to E as a foreshadowed motion, I will be supporting that.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. A question, if I may, please. What is the preparation? We've heard a lot of the preparation to keep things going while we go through caretaker. What's the preparation for business continuity support, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The business preparation is, we have a business continuity guide that is available to anyone.
Sorry, I might need to clarify. Sorry, the business continuity plan for all of the business in Mooloolaba, not the business of council continuing. Sorry, clarification.
So the continuity guide is for parties outside of council, so that they can make plans for what they might do with their business with infrastructure projects in their area. you know, we've talked today a lot about all the consultation that's gone beforehand. I don't know what individual businesses have done at this point. I don't think any of us quite know that. They may have their own individual plans. The business activation process and strategy intends to try and work with them to ensure that everyone is informed and that there's a range of things going on in Mooloolaba to try and make the best of the activation opportunities that we might have, co-designed between council and the business activation group.
Okay. Great, thank you. So it's ready to go as we need to start thinking that way. Okay. I'll speak to the motion, Mayor. It's been a fascinating discussion and debate. It's really interesting how and why we've got to this point, given previous decisions that we've heard a lot about. There's a couple of points I want to make really clear. There may be conflicting and competing engineering reports, but I would hope that as an organisation we would never consider the risk to the community of the failure of a piece of infrastructure. So in the hinterland recently we found that there was a deck and a set of stairs were not in good condition and not safe. They've been cordoned off and put out of use and out of access. Now that's had some impact on the community that used that particular council building, but nonetheless, quite rightly, we have said, no, we can't use that anymore and it must stop. And we do that before someone gets hurt. I would be horrified if we were waiting for something to collapse before we actually stopped using it and people were dead. And living through something like that is just unacceptable. And thank you for the work that the staff do on a daily basis for all of our infrastructure to keep it as safe as we possibly can and avoid anything horrible happening. It's unthinkable, and please keep doing that. And depending which engineering report you want to read, we have to protect the community. So thank you for doing that and keep doing it, please. Specifically, so that I don't need a lot of time today, I have the sense that overall there is support for this to go ahead. What community and what business community wouldn't want the kind of investment happening in their town and be willing to suffer the hardship during construction? I would be ecstatic to be spending this kind of investment in any hinterland town at the moment. And I would work with the community to enable them to work through the disruption that would occur while the project happens. But we're required to support the key attractors and the key reasons that people come and visit the coast. But let me tell you, there are a lot of reasons that people come and visit the hinterland, and will do so more and more when we actually have an Olympic venue in the hinterland, and we've got to prepare and get ready for that. But there is nothing like the investment coming forward to support that to happen. And when we talk about the difficulty businesses are experiencing, that's not special and exclusive to this highly invested area by the ratepayers and by the taxpayers into the coastline and into Mooloolaba. The level of investment is not happening elsewhere to this extent. But we do that and we support it because it brings visitors who will come to the hinterland and other areas and support those businesses. But this isn't a business support package in the short term. Yes, it is in the long term, and those business owners and those people who have invested will get a huge return on their investment. And I look forward to when we can provide further investment and support for other areas at the same level, because then the whole coast will see benefit of the work of this council and the fact that we've done this today so that future visitors will come and want to have a better experience of the whole coast. But businesses across the whole country are doing it tough at the moment, and a lot of them would welcome this scale of investment in their backyard. So let's not forget that. In relation to the item being at the bottom there, having listened to all of the arguments and giving consideration of what changes and what might be different, I've found that I've come to the point that I'll support it as it is with the addition of F on the basis that when we come to a new council, depending on who sits around the table and who they represent and what they want to achieve, If they then ask for that report to come to council, well, we've lost the period from now until the new council is formed towards April sometime to get that in motion and make it happen. So the addition of that is a signal to the CEO to get ready so that that report is ready and is not further delayed into June, July or August because we weren't working towards it. So on the basis of this actually accelerates progress for the new council to get to the right point, I'm willing to support that. And let's get to that point and we'll see how we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Natali for a question.
Yeah, a question through to Scott Taylor, if I could. Scott, in regards to the safety concerns of the Live With a View, you've already put out what part of the Live With a View is the biggest concern, the cantilevered area. And you've also explained what measures you would take if you ever came to the conclusion that it was a risk. That's been sent out, is that correct? The councillors?
Sorry, through the Mayor, sorry, the last point of your question is through to the councillors.
Your action to ensure the safety of the community is to be able to rope that area off, you know, create barriers to prevent people from entering that piece of cantilevered area, because that's what the engineering report is most concerned about. And you've already, I've received, you know, the indication of what the action would be. Have I ever tried to stop you or argued that that should not be the case if you ever made that decision? I mean, the point is that what my opinion is and what council's opinion is could be two different things. But I accept that if the officers feel that there is a risk, there is a process. The point I'm trying to make here is,
Councillor Natali.
the point I'm trying to make, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan?
Councillor Natali, please sit down while I deal with the point of order. You said you wanted to ask a question, right? Can we get an answer to the question? Because the additional information you're bringing to the discussion really is speaking to the motion, in my view.
To answer your question, I think if I understand it correctly, there's a number of points in your discussion there. I think in the operational service delivery component of our maintenance program, where we preemptively think about restricting access to a facility in any nature, we have not shared that procedure with the councillors, no. That's part of our ongoing role that we do on a day-to-day basis. Have us or any of our staff felt intimidated in any way that any of the councillors have sought to have influence on that? That's not the case at all. We've been allowed to get on and do our job, and we'll continue to do that. And public safety is something that occurs in all our facilities, from the hinterland through to libraries to beach access. It's an ongoing open proposition. It's an operational matter and something that we don't consider we need to come back and brief councillors on a case-by-case basis. We maintain situational awareness of public safety as our number one priority, and that public safety extends to people visiting and using our facilities as well as our own staff, and so it's business as usual for us.
Thank you.
Just one final question to Chris, through you, Mr. Mayor. How much has council budgeted for the activation of Mooloolaba to be able to fund whatever suggestions come from the consultants working with the business community? How much have you actually allocated for that?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think there's a line identified as around 100,000 or just over in our budget to support activation initiatives at this point in time.
And is that the recommendation of the consultants, or was that just the budget allocation that you put aside thinking that that would be sufficient?
At this point in time, we are waiting for feedback from the consultants, and we'll take their feedback on, on good advice around the strategy and what that would require. We would then have a discussion if it needs to alter from that with the project control group.
Thank you.
And just one final point on the point of order, Mr. Mayor. You actually spoke to this motion right at the beginning, and then chose to speak to the motion again. So I make that point.
I'm going to go to Councillor Landsberg. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I wasn't actually going to speak to this today. I've after witnessing the conversations in regards to from my fellow councillors and obviously yourself as well, Mr Mayor, but I do feel the need to maybe just make a couple of comments in regards to obviously this addition to this item in particular F. I greatly respect our councillors that represent the divisions. Obviously, Councillor O'Prey and Councillor Joe Natoli, they have lived through obviously a lot of the works and major projects that this council has actually endorsed and delivered. I see the need for the business community in Mooloolaba to be obviously engaged, and to be honest, they probably haven't maybe come out and really been engaged in a proactive way leading up to this during the whole previous engagement process that council have taken on. But that's our community. When you look at the numbers of results and feedback in the initial between blue and yellow in terms of that foreshore work, I honestly thought we would have seen much, much more numbers in that survey in regards to the thousands of people that visit Mooloolaba foreshore and enjoy that area. Just comments around the jewel in the crown and what Mooloolaba bring to our coast. Yes, it's an amazing location, but let's not forget other areas of the Sunshine Coast which Councillor Law just spoke about. And we really have to acknowledge that our coastal hazard adaptation strategy, which has been recently endorsed by Council, also provides direction to renew all of our ageing seawalls. We have a lot of work to do in regards to along our coastal foreshore areas and protect our assets. I know the main contract works are up to commence mid-2024, which is obviously, and I'm sure that I will support those works to continue. But what does this send to our industry holding off the process of going out for the tender process? And for our officers, which I just want to comment on their professionalism and the team that we have here and the projects that Council deliver over my term that I've sat here, I could not be any more impressed. And every decision that they brought to Council I've fully supported. But I will support the item F that's been added here today, because I feel that the conversation is that, yes, it can come back to Council, it can be called up. Madam CEO has spoken in regards to our budget discussions as well in the first term of Council. And if I am obviously re-elected, I will be supporting this project to move forward as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. There are no further speakers. I'm going to go back to Councillor O'Prey to close.
Indulgence, can I just ask a question first before I close? Through you, Mr Mayor, to Bill Hadrill. Councillor Winston asked a really pertinent question about his decision-making. He was kind of on the fence and he was worried about the time delays and the fact that if a report came back to Council, whether it be April or May, the impacts that might have on a 2-year season, construction season. Could you please elaborate that so Councillor Winston's got the full and thorough information before he makes his final decision today, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, thanks for the question. I guess in regard to the timeframe, what we've heard here this morning is that the awarding of the contract won't occur before the 29th of January or there or thereabouts when caretaker period commences. So the awarding of the contract will occur April, May, something along those lines. That's the time frame when it could proceed. Once we're out of the caretaker period and as the CEO has already indicated, have the operational authority from the January 2023 ordinary meeting of Council to proceed with that awarding of the contract. I think the risk that has been discussed here this morning and is a very real risk is that the further that any further consideration of the awarding of the contract is pushed back into the 2024 calendar year, elevates or increases the risk that the delivery and the completion of the Stage 2 project will definitely take longer. The longer it takes to start, the longer it'll take to finish. And so, I think we have to be very mindful that if it's pushed back, And if the project doesn't start in June or there or thereabouts, then the further the delay, the stronger the likelihood of it crossing over to summer holiday periods.
Thank you for that. And for absolute clarity, the wording in item F says to the new council prior to awarding the tender of the Mooloolaba Foreshore project. So that has no impact because we have to have that meeting prior to the awarding of the contract. Is that right?
Through the Mayor, no. My reading of F is that a report would be provided to the new council prior to the awarding of the tender. My reading of F is that it doesn't change where the delegated authority currently sits. That has been provided by the January 2023 ordinary meeting of council, and that recommendation F would provide the opportunity for a further update to council on the status of discussions with the community reference groups, and then we would move to award the tender.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep.
You're closing now, councillor?
Sure. Thank
I was going to the question.
Well, I'd already handed over to councillor O'Prey to close.
I thought he was asking a question.
Well, he preempted his close with the question, but that's the stage we're at. Hold on. We've got a very similar process. We've been doing it for 4 years. I called on councillor O'Prey to close because there were no further speakers. Please close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's right. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, a lot of debate and discussion today, which is extraordinary. I think there is overwhelming support for the staff, for the community, for the businesses, and for every one of those elements on there today. Overwhelming support for everything. The debate and discussion about whether we should have a report brought to council was a simple request, very simple request that I put onto the bottom of that. The debate and discussion went into a lot of different tangents, which this is what this chamber is all about. And you've said that before. This is the centre of Sunshine Coast democracy, and we love the fact that we can do that here. Mr. Mayor, the request to bring a report back to council before the awarding the tender of the Mooloolaba Foreshore Revitalisation Project, Stage 2, Central Meeting Place and Southern Wall, is about making sure that everybody is on the same page in the next term of council. It gives everybody an opportunity, and that's really what it was about. And I thank the councillors who have spoken in support of that today. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say thank you again to all the staff for all your work. And I would also like to mention that on every single occasion, I have supported the Mooloolaba Foreshore project. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor O'Prey. We'll put the motion as is presented to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Landsberg, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Dixon, Councillor O'Prey, Councillor Law and Councillor Babarowski. And those opposed, Councillor Cox, Councillor Johnston, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Suarez and Councillor Jamieson. I think that's 6-5 in favour, so the motion's carried. I think that, thank you to the staff very much for the presentation, the response to questions. I think we might take a morning tea break and be back at 11:35, please. And the next item is 8.2, the infrastructure charges rebate for eligible community organisations policy. And I invite Mark Innes and Josh Walker, who are going to give us a presentation. Thanks, Mark.
You can hear me? It's better. Thank you. So what we're proposing here today is a minor amendment to the existing infrastructure charges rebates policy for eligible community organisations, and that's to support the housing and homelessness action plan that was recently adopted. And the purpose of that is to reduce the overall development costs to the providers of affordable housing. So we're proposing to provide 100% rebate of infrastructure charges for eligible organisations for the provision of affordable housing. Now, that definition of affordable housing is taken from the action plan, so this policy will be consistent with that action plan and the operation of it. So there's no limitation to the types of housing that the rebate will apply to, but it only applies to the identified organisations in the policy. It doesn't apply to the normal providers of market rate housing. So it's consistent with what other councils do around South East Queensland. There are slight variations with other councils, obviously, according to local conditions, but it's a consistent practice. As far as financial implications are concerned, we don't expect it to significantly impact on the provision of trunk infrastructure. It's difficult to predict the future in terms of how much we expect the rebates will add up to. But we certainly monitor our infrastructure charges and we'll be definitely reviewing this 12 monthly so that we're aware of the impacts of the rebate on council going forward. Okay. So that's the specific amendment to the policy. In the table there, you can see down the bottom there, we've included registered community housing providers and also the inclusion of affordable housing for the rebate if that's provided by the other organisations that are otherwise eligible for this rebate in the policy. So that is the recommendation.
Thank you, Mark. Somebody prepared to move? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Law, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Some questions. Put to you, this is very worthwhile and I'm happy to support it. I'm concerned with the timelines and getting surety that people have use it or lose it, sort of thing where they've got to do it by a certain time, otherwise they lose it, to make sure this comes out of the ground. What I'm looking for, I think I was sent here, could be a possible inclusion. The application for a rebate is received between the 1st of January 2024 and the 31st of December 2027, and the building work for the development is substantially commenced by the 31st of December 2028. Has that been included in the conditions in there? Because when we get to that point, then council can see how well it's worked and whether it wants to continue this or not.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's not included in the amended policy at this point, but we're certainly open to that sort of amendment to the policy.
Could I move that amendment to the policy at this point, Mr. Mayor? Because I think it's important for us to do that.
Yeah, the trouble is you've actually moved the motion as it stands. Let's just think through that for a moment. I think what you're trying to do is admirable. How can we find a way around that? Someone else move it as an amendment.
Unless you want me to step back from moving it and someone else can move the thing, then I'll ask for an amendment.
Yeah, well, again, given you've opened the debate, I think we need to observe that. Is somebody else prepared to move with the proposed amendment? Audio.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, the policy as it stands has an annual review process. All policies are reviewed in reasonable time anyway, as this is an addition to an existing policy around infrastructure charges. So during that annual review process, there would be an opportunity to review that, see how it's operating, and then, if necessary, put in far more stricter, well, the guidelines have the timelines. A development application would have a time sunset clause on it.
Do those guidelines have what Councillor Ted is?
The fact of a development application has a set time period on substantive construction beginning would give that sort of impetus to the timeline, not as specifically as Councillor Ted has asked for. So I don't know if that helps you in your consideration.
No.
Oh, right.
Well, it's nice to know that's there, but I mean... Yeah.
But can I withdraw my moving it so that I can then move the amendment to whoever does this
You can't withdraw.
Yeah, 'cause it's on the, if you scroll up, it's...
An amendment from Councillor Johnston. Can I have someone to second that? Councillor Cox, thank you. Yep. Would you like to open the amendment, Councillor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This is something that had been discussed when it was brought to us Monday last week. And the question that both Councillor Hungerford and myself, and I think one other councillor, might have been Councillor Cox, was about the sunset clause or something or other. And what I'm really wanting in this is to provide a situation for people who may be planning to do something that they know that they've got a period of time without spending a lot of money and then putting their application in. They've got a period of time that they can do it and know that it's not just going to be cut off before they get their application in. So that's basically what I think the principle was. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on the amendment? Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yeah, Councillor Johnston is correct. There was a couple of questions in relation to timeframes, and I just wanted to thank Mr Innes and Mr Walker for putting together some additional information, and received a phone call as well in relation to what we were actually trying to achieve. So Councillor Hungerford's obviously worked with staff to come up with this wording, and I'll be supportive of it.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Hungerford.
And I thank Councillor Winston and Peter for supporting this. What the idea of this is we've got a housing crisis here on the coast here. Council hasn't got many levers to pull, and we've got the smallest revenue of any level of government to actually deliver it. It falls in the realms of state and Commonwealth government, and that's been very lacking at the moment. We're looking at what we can do, and this is to support those organisations to more rapidly get that housing out of the ground, because we've got that need in the community. And this gives more certainty on, they know they've got a timeline to do this in, to get them to come out of the ground faster, rather than dragging on for years to get the results. The results what Council's looking for. So I very much support this today. It's very worthwhile.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you. And certainly I also acknowledge this is a very good initiative. I just wanted to jump at a potential shadow. Is there any likelihood that there would be a rapid expansion for applications to become an eligible community organisation by those who don't have sincere or integrity to their intent? Is that possible? And would we worry anyway?
Yeah, that's... Can anyone answer that question? Yes. Thanks, Mark.
Councillor, we have the organisations that we are speaking of are identified through the Queensland Housing Act. So it's a very specific identification process. There are about 21 such organisations, I believe, nationally. So it's a very specific, precise process. It's not something that can casually be achieved.
Josh,
that was the answer. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just to add to that as well, there's also the insertion of council at our discretion can apply an infrastructure agreement, which requires certainty around the delivery of that for the purpose, express purpose of affordable housing. So there's two levels of assurance there, Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no further speakers, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Landsberg.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Actually, I just want to make a note and fully supportive, obviously, of this of the rebate for the infrastructure charges. Just on our application form, I'm sure the staff will be all over it, but it just lists Maroochydore Office 10 First Avenue, Maroochydore, and Caloundra Office 1 Omra Avenue. Just considering the admin building's under construction for 18 months. I don't know if the postal addresses change, and obviously it just shows First Avenue as a postal address. Does that have any effect?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's something we'll address, yes, and make sure that that's appropriate.
Just for speakers, we need, and I understand what your point is, but we just need to concentrate on the amendment for the moment until it...
Oh, my apologies.
Yep, you're right. Let's, when it becomes the motion, we can talk. Let's go to Councillor Law.
Thank you. A question, if I may, just for clarity. On the amendment that we've got there, is that is an amendment to change the policy to say that? And have we got a copy, or can you tell me where in the policy that will then appear? And are you confident that this doesn't dilute the intent or the impact of this policy?
In the policy, it'll be included in the assessment part of the policy. I can certainly provide you with more information on that. It will be formally included in the policy. I'm sorry, was the second part of your question?
Will that dilute the intention and the impact of what we want to achieve here?
No, I don't believe so. The process is still the same. All it does is provides us with a formal process to assess the operation of the amendment to the policy, and we have the opportunity to, at that point of the assessment, to then extend it or remove it as we choose down the track, depending on how we feel that is operating.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think for my certainty, I would like to see what that looks like in the policy, because when I'm looking at it, it's not quite like that at the moment. Very pedantic, but in the policy it's ABC, not 1, 2, 3. So I'm just looking for, and I'm trying to find what it will look like in the new policy before I can support the motion. Sorry, support the amendment.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for your question. Councillor Law, we would add that into the policy in a time, we'd probably put a new section around timing, so it's quite specific in the policy. It's not sitting there now. So we would put it into the policy very specifically. I think in answer to your question you asked previously, this actually, I think, provides more clarity. It provides more clarity to the industry or to the people providing the affordable housing product, because it actually gives them a time frame, a very specific time frame. Now, at any point in time, this can be brought back before council, as we know, and a different decision could be made. But for the moment, I think this provides further clarity to the industry around the time frame, and I think it's quite a good addition to that policy. It's not uncommon for such timeframes to be added to policies, but equally, what the team are also proposing to do is that annually, to bring back a report like we do for the secondary dwelling changes that the state government introduced, to actually bring back a report that actually talks to, or provide a report to councillors that actually talks to how this policy has been achieved or picked up and how much we might have foregone in infrastructure revenue.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So on the basis of those answers and the assurances, then I would be happy to support Councillor Winston's amendment.
Thank you. Do I need to give Winston a chance to wrap up? Yeah. Yep. Do you need anything further to say, Councillor, on the amendment becoming the motion?
No, thanks. I think it's
okay,
clear enough.
We'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment becoming the motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So the amendment is now the motion. Is there any further commentary? Something more you want to say, Councillor Law? No?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I wish to speak in support of the motion in front of us now and seek the support of all councillors looking for a unanimous decision on this. And pointing us back to the Housing and Homelessness Action Plan. And this is another one of the outcomes of that being supported by us all back in July of last year. And again, it's one of the things that we have the ability to influence and encourage the construction sector, the housing sector, and obviously specifically the community affordable housing sector, to want to see that we are supporting them in the work that they might be attempting to do to make a difference for people who are currently not got anywhere to live, essentially. So I hope that we are able to support this without any difficulty whatsoever. We don't know the exact financial impact, and I know that that can cause concern for some people. However, this is a clear indication that we are supporting our own Housing and Homelessness Action Plan. And thank you very much to the team of bringing this to us. Extremely grateful, and I hope that it will make a difference and we will be able to communicate this to the housing sector so that they can come on board and work with us to achieve some more affordable housing in our community. So thank you for that, and I urge your support.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Johnston.
No, I just was going to close.
All right. Well, there are no further speakers, so you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I'd just like to, in closing, thank the officers for responding very dear to his heart. I'm not saying that it's not dear to the rest of us, but particularly so to him. So thank you very much, and I'd encourage everybody to vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. Item 8.3 is the festive season program. And I invite Claudia, Janine. Good morning, ladies. Welcome. And we're in your hands.
Okay. Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. A full review of the festive season program was conducted in 2020-2021 with a recommended program endorsed by council and subsequently implemented. 3 years on, increasing costs and some placemaking changes are impacting on program delivery. This report recommends a range of changes to the program for 2024, aiming to manage the financial impacts, including requiring no additional investment. Please note we will be coming back to the new council later this calendar year for a workshop to discuss the desired outcomes and objectives for the festive program for 2025 delivery onwards. The current festive program comprises Christmas infrastructure such as banners, trees, a regional Christmas event, grants program, New Year's Eve, as well as Australia Day initiatives. The budget is as seen on the screen. The recommended festive season program changes comprise no changes to the Australia Day program of a citizenship ceremony, which is a federal requirement and is funded via the citizenship program, or the Australia Day events led by the community and funded by the Festive and Commemorative Events Grants program. No changes to Christmas infrastructure of decorated trees and street poles across the region. However, an increase in budget is recommended to support increased costs and new communities. Increased funding to the High Demand Festive and Commemorative Events Grants program, which supports community-led Christmas, New Year's Eve, Australia Day and Anzac Day events across the region. Due to increased demand and event costs, it is recommended that the funding is increased from $55,000 to $121,000. The regional Christmas event, which was Festive Garden at Maroochy Botanic Garden in 21-22 and Festive on the Green at Sunshine Coast Stadium 2023, it is recommended this event is no longer produced by council due to increasing costs, and that this funding, $98,000, is redistributed to the Festive and Commemorative Events Grants program and to support the community-led Christmas infrastructure, as previously mentioned. This will close the gap on increasing costs and support new communities. Data also shows that the community wish to attend Christmas events in their own community, and that 50% of attendees to the festive regional garden events lived within 10 kilometres of the event. Regarding New Year's Eve, currently a community safety event delivered by council in partnership with emergency services annually at Mooloolaba Foreshore, which attracts up to 35,000 people. Due to increased costs alongside placemaking impacts, it is recommended to split the New Year's Eve budget to deliver 2 events. One being a family-focused 8:30 p.m. fireworks display with associated logistics, including security, police, permits, traffic control, park and ride bus service and on-ground activation. And a new alcohol and drug-free youth event targeted at 13 to 18-year-olds. The event will be ticketed but low cost to ensure accessibility, and it will support entertainment, safety measures, including free transport to and from the event, and it would be hoped that Council's Youth Academy could assist in designing this event. This slide shows the reallocations associated with the proposed changes, including the removal of the regional Christmas event and the redistribution of those funds to the Christmas infrastructure and to increase the Festive and Commemorative Events Grant program and the splitting of the New Year's Eve budget. No changes to Australia Day. The citizenship ceremony is funded via the citizenship program, and the Australia Day community events are funded via the Festive and Commemorative Events Grants program, which we are looking to increase. Therefore, this is the recommendation on screen, recommended via the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Someone to move? Councillor Law, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Cox. Would like to open, Councillor Law?
Thank you, and through you, Mr Mayor, yes, happy to open and speak in support of this motion and this program for our festive season going into the next year, having just said goodbye to the last festive season. It's good to see that we're planning and getting ready for the next one. The review that has taken place a couple of years ago has led to our current program that we've been operating. And I think the recommendation, the items in the report, for me, capture the sorts of comments I'm hearing from the community of what they go to, what they don't go to, what they like, what they don't like. And certainly there's that distinction between the more Christmas-focused ones. People want to be in their community. They want to be doing things locally. They want to have recognition of Christmas in the local places and spaces. And I think our program does that quite well across the whole region. And then it does seem that people want to get together on the coast, for those traditional firework type things. The idea of the youth event, I've been quite excited about that for a while, and I'm really positive to hear that you want to involve our Youth Academy in the design and construction of that event. They had a really successful event last year called Wired, and I'm confident that working with our team, they'll be able to come up with something that will be relevant, will be accessible for the young people in our community who want to safely go out and celebrate the new year, where they know that they'll be able to get home, where their parents and family will be happy for them to go along and enjoy that kind of program. Well done for keeping it within the same budget. That's a good achievement.
So many different groups and everyone's looking for something different. I had a lot of feedback over this Christmas period. Obviously, a lot of people are happy with the way things are. I do get some positive feedback. There were some people in the community saying we'd like more banners and trees and whatnot. And again, it's really hard because if you look through the budget, we already spend a fair bit of money on street banners and trees already. And I never hear people tell me that they want to spend more. They actually want to spend less. I'd like to right now be able to unpack this whole festive season strategy and work out, whether or not we do fireworks anymore. I've had a lot of people say, Christian, we don't support fireworks anymore, particularly with the biosphere. Can you look at drones or lasers or something else, which we have previously looked at? They're not cheap either. But I'd really like to see us have an engagement with residents to find out what the future looks like. I think there's probably a time where they're wanting to be engaged, and that's now. But I realise we can't do that. The election is so close. We're nearly in caretaker period. You're planning for this festive season, which will come around quickly. But I am very much looking forward to that future discussion if I'm around. But I'll endorse this today and just thank you again for your efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm somewhat flummoxed about the statement that we're keeping it within the same budget, because within the content it says that we're redistributing to the festive and commemorative events grant programs, and for that to occur, or will it still have to be considered as part of the budget deliberations?
I've been clear. The festive garden Christmas event will no longer be held, so that's where the money will be distributed to the grants program and to the Christmas infrastructure. So that's how we will manage those two increases, by no longer having that regional Christmas festive garden event. Thank you.
I understand that. We're actually overall still going to be spending $66,000 more, not on this program, but combined. So it's not true to say that it's within last year's budget, because, and the question was, have we decided within the budget deliberations to increase the amount of funding, that 66,000, for the appropriate line item within other parts of the budget, the grants parts of the budget?
Through you, Mr Mayor, hopefully I can try and respond to that. The whole program is called the Festive Season Program, and how the money is allocated within the program between those particular parts of that program is what we're discussing. So yes, it is the same budget within the Festive Season Program. today's decision by council will provide that line item in the budget.
No guarantee it's going to get passed.
As per normal process, it gets discussed at the budget discussions.
I'm sorry, Mr Mayor, and to the officers. The additional 66,000 has been transferred to another budget item. I'm not saying that the budget hasn't been kept within last year's budget for this particular festive season program, but by making this decision, we are actually transferring $66,000 worth of additional funding into the grants program.
Yes, that's what we're asking. However, when we receive the money from council, the line item is festive season program, and then we, as officers, put money where the festive season money needs to go. But we are asking, particularly around the grants program, because the festive season program works in partnership with another area of council to deliver those grants.
Can I go to Councillor Cox, please?
Councillor Babarowski had his hand up before me.
No,
okay, I'm happy to go.
You were next in line.
Look, thanks, ladies, for bringing this report to us. It's never easy to try and appease everyone. We live in a community of communities, and everyone has a voice and has an opinion. And I think the report here that we're discussing today certainly brings together a lot of those voices. Certainly, we have some challenges in relation to the Mooloolaba foreshore and that area with item 8.1 that was discussed earlier today, the challenges that will be around that particular precinct for hosting any large event on New Year's Eve. So I certainly think you've done a great job in trying to compromise and bring the community together, both in the Christmas space and the New Year space. And like Councillor Law said, I'm certainly looking forward to hearing the success potentially this time next year around the youth party, so to speak, on New Year's Eve. So, yeah, I'll be supporting this here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to make the observation, I really do support the further allocations to essentially a distributed program via the community events. So that's a good thing. It clearly recognised that 55,000 in today's world really was seriously inadequate. So that's a good thing. I do think a little, perhaps I think I heard from Councillor Dixon, I would too look forward to the 2025 review, because to some extent I think we do need to think about our role as a region in celebrating these major events, particularly the regional Christmas event, which was at the Botanical Gardens, which I thought was difficult in terms of access to that location, was incredibly well delivered and very well received, and had lots of potential. So I'm hoping that we'll rethink about that type of offer in the 2025 review. But in the meantime, considering that we've got to be very pragmatic and to some extent very conscious about increasing budgets, this is a very sensible review and it has my support.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I too support the officer's recommendations. Obviously these reviews are important for us to be able to conduct every year and go back, and of course the consultation that we've had with the community over the last couple of years has really indicated that there is a need to continue to make adjustments and consider the community's appetite for things like fireworks versus drones, lasers, and ultimately, I suppose, we see the community come out to New Year's Eve at Mooloolaba and 35,000 people there is an indication they support, you know, obviously what council has been putting on. And over the years, you know, like the event has changed considerably in Mooloolaba. It's a wonderful event leading up, especially for children, the amount of rides, entertainment. It was just jam-packed, and we've probably lost that essence of really having something quite unique, and it's become more focused on safe and delivering an event without necessarily the wow factors that I would like, and I think sometimes the community would love to see. I think the value in Mooloolaba has always been that event that leads up to 8:30, supporting families, supporting those young children, enjoying, celebrating fireworks. We've always had an issue after 8:30. My question has always been that for people my age and older that would just love to listen to her and seeing the midnight fireworks. So I totally understand that next year the disruptions that are going to happen in Mooloolaba, that we've got to make significant changes, and like Councillor Law, I think the youth the youth event is really something that I think will go really well. They're looking for places, and leaving them in places like Noosa or Mooloolaba, and we've seen in Noosa they haven't had the security. They've had major problems with glass on beach, and it's very difficult to control the safety of those kids, and the police that have to interact with them are putting their lives at risk as well. So I think you know, having it in a contained area like the stadium is probably a really good thing. The Christmas event, I still believe that the review will bring opportunities for us to really look at other things that can be done during Christmas. And I think we use our imaginations. I think growth to those towns and those markets are just incredible. And I'd love to see a series of Christmas markets maybe generated up in the hinterland or something like that that could come out of the money that now is allocated there. So I totally support the recommendation.
Maybe a bit of snow as well.
What's that?
Snow as well, Joe, would be handy.
You've seen the snow machines.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the report. I wasn't here for the information session, so I've got quite a few questions. The Coolum Business and Tourism Organisation host carols in the park and have done a laser light show over the last couple of years. They are not listed in the in your table here, yet they do receive council funding. I'm just wondering if they're receiving alternative funding, or are they not receiving it through the festive program?
Through you, Mr Mayor. My understanding is that they should be receiving Coolum Christmas activity. I'm not 100% sure if they are getting it through the Festive and Commemorative Events Grants program. I know they did come through for the New Year's Eve program a couple of years ago, but they haven't been back for that specific event. But for the Christmas event, I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look at which table are you looking at? Is that in the additional information or in the report?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's actually in the, towards the back. It's in the report, I believe. Sorry, it's page 16 of 16 in the attachment 3.
My understanding is that all of the information here is correct. So if it's not listed there, then possibly they are going through the community grants program. But I can definitely check that and get that information back to you.
Thank you. Yes, they definitely have the Sunshine Coast logo on their promotional material, so they're definitely supported by us. Just in terms of the fund reallocation, having the Christmas event cancelled in toto, the regional Christmas event cancelled in total and redistributed to the communities for their own events. Is the intention that that funding is just increased to the communities who are already holding events, or do you have a number of new communities that will be holding events?
Yeah. That will be for a combination of both factors. The cost of putting events on has increased significantly. A lot of those events are struggling with those increased costs. And secondly, there are new communities that are coming on board, Palmview, Aura, Harmony, etc., who are looking to establish some events. So it is the traditional events plus the new communities coming on board.
Thank you. The information that I have in my pack, which was printed for me, had a different location to what I've seen on one of the slides here in terms of the New Year's Eve fireworks event. Can you confirm what the actual location would be for a fireworks event for this New Year's Eve?
That will be an operational decision that will be made once we start planning for this year's event. We need to sign off to do what we're going to do, and then we will start to work with all of the relevant stakeholders on where the best outcome is. We'll need to look very closely at all the placemaking plans, obviously knowing crowd movement on the evening and making sure that it's safe, but it will be for viewing from Mooloolaba. Where the actual site operational, where that will be fired from, to be determined, but it will be for viewing from Mooloolaba and similar locations.
So the community would be gathered at Mooloolaba for the fireworks event, is that?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Currently, community are from Kamoana to from Balsa Park, Mooloolaba, all the way up to Alex. So even though the event footprint is just within Mooloolaba, the viewing of the fireworks is a very large location. So what we will be doing is trying to service a similar viewing audience with the exact location to be determined.
Okay, because the location that was put forward, proposed location that was put forward to begin with, I have major concerns about if that's where the fireworks are to be set off. Is that Point Cartwright?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I believe the original word said vicinity of. It's currently done from the rock wall on the end of Mooloolaba Beach, which is across the road, so to speak, from Point Cartwright. But we will be really looking at that, talking to different stakeholders, obviously for a myriad of different reasons.
Thank you. I appreciate that you've got a limited budget and you've got to work within. However, I feel like the reallocation of funds within this is diminishing, I guess, the festive season for the community. I thought a regional event was very good. I understand the University of the Sunshine Coast many years ago had a light display at the university which was highly popular, easily accessible, a lot of parking there as well. And then we transitioned across and had our own event at the Maroochy Botanic Gardens. I understand the logistical problems with that event, but having a multi-day sort of Christmas event is good, not only for the community to go to, but also for some local businesses, you know, food trucks, event people as well. So removing that is having a broader impact, not just on our community, but on our business suppliers as well. So I'm not really a fan of removing a complete regional Christmas event. Highly supportive of the local Christmas carols events because that is where the school kids want to go and perform in front of their parents in the local dance schools, etc. I don't want to vote against this motion, but I am not fully supportive of it. I did hear mention of a review. Can you please talk me through what that review would be and when that would occur?
Through you, Mr Mayor. We would be looking at having a review as soon as the new council has time to fit us into their workshop schedule. That will be looking at the entire festive season program, what we do, why we do it, when we do it, where we do it and how we do it. So that will be taking place this year. So this report is only for the 2024 delivery. That review and workshop will look at 2025 onwards.
Okay, well, I will support the report as it is, but just for the record, note that I'm extremely disappointed we've missed out on a regional Christmas event for the region.
Thank you. Councillor Suarez. Councillor Landsberg.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, I'd like to obviously also support the officer's recommendation, but I will look forward to, hopefully we're back here in the new term, to discuss some significant issues in Caloundra in regards to the festivities, and especially away in terms of some of the funding streams that we've had to be responsible for in delivering Christmas tree, street banners and things like that. So, but thanks to the team, I know they're probably under-resourced, and I think our community groups, it's one of the comments in the assessment was obviously more of a responsibility for our community groups to take on this, delivering these programs, and I think we really need to do more. We're elected to deliver a community benefit, and I think the more that we can help these groups go.
Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Item 8.4 is the disposal of a lease of 60 Fellowship Drive at Doonan. And Lee and Fiona will be here in a moment to give us a presentation. G'day, Lee. Hello, Fiona. We're in your hands.
Thank you. This report has been submitted to seek an exception from Council in accordance with Local Government Regulation 2012. The exception seeks to allow Council to dispose of land by way of lease by private treaty negotiations rather than undertaking a second tender release for the property at 60 Fellowship Drive, Doonan. The land located at 60 Fellowship Drive, Doonan is owned by the State of Queensland and is managed under trust by Council since 2019. The land is held under this trust for the purpose of environmental park, public halls, recreation and sporting uses. The land is also subject to Council's community facility zoning, which allows a range of community activities to meet the social, educational, cultural, creative and infrastructure needs of the community. The property has significant infrastructure already developed, including a main hall with kitchen, 2 dormitory-style accommodation houses, separate meeting spaces, storage sheds and a car track. 2 community organisations for driver training regularly use the site under a community land permit and will continue to do so into the future. Council's land is shown in orange on the display plan and attachments 1 and 2 of this report. The infrastructure and improvement site plan showing locations of the infrastructure on site is included in attachment 3. Council released the opportunity for potential organisations to apply for a 10-year trustee lease over the whole site via its usual tender process. The tender closed on the 25th of July 2023 and respondents were advised that applications were not successful on the 13th of November 2023. 1 submission was received in response. Following an extensive review and evaluation, the tender was not considered advantageous for Council to award. When no leases eventuate from a tender process, Council is able to, with an exception being granted by Council, market and enter into leases via private treaty negotiations. Common and natural areas can remain under Council management. The community organisations eventuating at the site are able to direct their funds to the community service delivery requirements rather than maintaining common area and broader site objectives. And it allows private individuals opportunities to apply for grant funding for the site rather than having to auspice through one organisation, and the common areas will remain accessible by the members of the public. On the basis that no lease eventuated from the tender process, it's requested that Council grant an exception under the Local Government Regulation 2012 to have the land at 60 Fellowship Drive, Doonan, leased via private treaty discussions to allow individual discussions with a broad range of community organisations. Thank you.
Happy to move, Councillor Suarez. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dixon, thank you. Please open, Councillor.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Lee, for the work that your team have done over the last few years. This site has been quite a difficult site over this term. There's been a lot of work that's been undertaken to reinstate the site after it had been left quite derelict. There's been intense interest in this site from a number of groups across not only our region, but from groups outside of our region. And the challenge is finding a suitable group that can undertake the whole of the site. The team have undertaken extensive work in exploring the expression of interest process and worked closely with the applicants to try and make it successful. But unfortunately, that was not able to occur. It seems reasonable and sensible to me for council to take this action and be able to have the site activated and used by worthy community groups in various portions of this land, rather than have one tenant manage the whole of the site. So I'm fully supportive of the work that the team have done, and I am happy to support this motion here today.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The question I'd like to ask in relation to, as an alternate to a lease, which generally only are offering 3 years sort of thing, would you be, because there are a number of user groups, would you be interested in creating a management group like at the Mullaney Showground and giving them an extended agreement as distinct to a lease?
Through you, Mr Chair, I think the initial intent of the tender that was released was to find a body that would oversee the whole site and then coordinate additional uses. That's not what we received, and probably, I guess, from the tender evaluation, probably didn't see that as advantageous. We've regrouped and re-strategised over that and think that the site might be better operated by council. It gives us a little bit more direction and control over who can go out and use that site. We've moved away from the management committee structure, I think, in Beerwah Sports Ground as well, and that seemed to work out well for council and both the reserve as well. So we're looking to achieve something very similar in this location too. So it's not off the table. However, the intent now is to probably look at either license or leases out there with individual groups.
You're talking about having leases on individual areas?
Through you, Mr Chair. Yes, leases potentially, depending if they need extensive renovations to those areas or they're looking at new builds, but licenses are also an option, but council officers don't need an exception for the licenses just to be able to lease.
Because as I see it, the problems will be coordination of events. For instance, if people are utilising the accommodation area and the community hall, and you've got a motor event next door to it, it could be a problem, and it needs to be coordinated, I think, on a local committee basis instead of by the council. But that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Are there any further speakers? Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Suarez to close. No need to close. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Yes. Thank you, Lee. And Fiona, we'll move to item 8.5, which is the 2023 Financial Performance Report, for which Michael Costello will give us a presentation. Welcome, Michael. Always good to see the Finance Chief with a smile on his face.
Always smiling, Mr Mayor. Grimacing, perhaps.
We're in your hands.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, to present the December 2023 Financial Performance Report. Results as at the end of December, $15.4 million operating result, which is ahead of budget by $841,000. The variations consist of revenue of below budget, sorry, $1.7 million, and expenses also below budget by $2.6 million. On the revenue side, Holiday Park revenue is ahead of budget at the end of December. Fees are below budget for the Clownton Music Festival, quarry services and plumbing applications. And on the expenditure, employee costs are over budget by $910,000, which is 1%. The largest impact being the signing bonus for the enterprise agreement of just under $1.5 million. And there'll be a clear understanding of the likely year-end result when we get to the January figures, when we got an understanding about the annual leave impacts that occur over just $5 million of the core capital program has been spent, which is 38.3% of the total budget. And our cash, as at the end of December, was just over $200 million. Our debt hasn't changed at $425 million, and we're anticipating new borrowings this year of $28.5 million. Our investment performance, we currently have 11 term deposits totalling $120 million, maturity from 0 to 179 days. Our weighted average interest returns at 5%. And the recommendation in front of you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Hungerford to move. Seconder, Councillor Johnston, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I won't quote all those figures again. CFO has quoted them all there. It's very pleasing to see the strong position Council's in. At the end of December, we're handing over to the incoming councillor council's finances that are second to none. I certainly hope the next council maintains the discipline required to maintain that, because if we do, the returns to the ratepayers are enormous. And I'm very pleased with where we've ended up, and I certainly want to see us maintain this. Maintaining our debt levels, our cash balances, you can actually deliver more to your community. So I'm very happy with where we're at, and I certainly look forward to this being maintained. The ratepayers out there should be very proud of the way we've managed our finances, with the highest rating we can get with Queensland Treasury. Strong with a neutral outlook. There's only, 3 councils in Queensland, 3 or 4 that can have achieved that out of 77. So all those that make out that we overspend on big projects, we do that with a focus on delivering a sound return and balancing the books. This is another excellent result. And to you and the finance team, thank you, because you come to me with the things straight away and answer my questions straight away. And it's a very good focus. We have a solid financial department in this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, through you. Yes, I'll echo everything that Councillor Hungerford has just said. Very sound financial management from the Sunshine Coast Council, and just want to thank the team for all the work they do behind the scenes to ensure we get the best information and obviously make the best decisions on behalf of our community. I know that in the December ordinary meeting I asked a question in relation to City Hall and the cost as it was known back then. And the reason I asked that was because there is a mayoral candidate that likes to embellish the figures, and I wanted to set the record straight then, because that particular individual has said that this building is $120 million plus, and we had it answered at that particular time that it was under the $100 million mark. Similarly, they are now talking about this debt levels crisis that we're faced. And so I just wanted to sort of pass on that in our 23-24 budget financial statements, we actually had a debt of $442 million. We have a population of 356,000, thereabouts, give or take a dozen or so. Our debt per capita is around about $1,200. So when you do the comparison to Brisbane, and I thank Mr Costello for providing me those figures, I think we were only about $250 ahead of that. So, as Councillor Hungerford has said, very sound, and especially when you start looking at the asset register, and you can see that the community assets here on the Sunshine Coast are billions upon billions of dollars in roads, stormwater, parks, $7 billion. So when you look at those current debt levels, I just want to make sure that everyone in our community understands that when they're voting in a couple of months' time, they're actually getting the facts, not all of this embellishment that we're seeing appear on social media. So to the team, I'll be supporting this here today, and thank you for your continued support.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Costello. once again, excellent report, and I'd like to thank you for taking up my request and sort of breaking down the various rate revenues in the report. It helps us when we're trying to explain to constituents about how much rate revenue is and where it comes from, etc. So thank you very much for that. I'd just also like to say that of our debt, the other thing needs to be pointed out that there's 106 million of it, approximately, that relates to not City Hall, but relates to the Maroochy City Centre. And over the coming years, because of the agreement that this council entered into with the Walker Corporation, that debt will be fully repaid and we will make money, hopefully, as well out of it. This council has turned around a situation where we were facing maybe a significant debt deficit of maybe $40 million to a situation where at the worst case we'll actually break even, and in the best case scenario over the years to come we'll actually make substantial profit on the development. So if you take that out, it brings the actual overall debt down to $335 million, which when you've got $7 billion worth of assets and the rate revenue that we have, that's really very acceptable. Part of the reason why, as Councillor Hungerford said, that we actually are rated so highly by the Queensland Treasury Corporation. So keep up the good work and thank you very much. It's also very interesting to note that we've had a substantial increase once again in interest revenue due to the current situation. How long that lasts for, we're not sure, but that'll be up to the Federal Reserve Bank as to how long it will continue, but I expect we will continue for this financial year to show an increase in that interest rate and interest received. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. If there are no further speakers, I'll go to Councillor Hungerford to close. Not necessary. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Good on you, Michael. Well done. We move to item 8.6, the consolidation of subordinate local law number 2. And there is no presentation. Mr Matheson, you're going to take questions. This is a further step in a process of the last couple of meetings. Are there any questions, or can I have someone move, please? Councillor Natoli, thank you. You have a seconder? Councillor Cox, thank you. Would you like to open or ask questions?
I'm just happy to support the this report and the recommendations to consolidate all of the subordinate local laws, number 2, animal with all of the other local laws. And it just makes it easy for the public to be able to access this information by doing this. So I just support that.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Even though I seconded this, I won't be supporting it purely because I haven't supported the process with the master plan the whole way along. I do know that this is just a formal process that council has to deal with, but I just thought I'd, because I won't be supporting it, I would give my reasons as to that.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. If there are no further speakers, do you want to close, Councillor? Not necessary. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Landsberg, Natoli, Johnston, Suarez, Law, Jamieson and Babarowski. Those opposed? Councillor Cox, Dixon, Hungerford and O'Prey. The motion's carried. And point 8.7, or item 8.7, is the appointment pardon me, of an independent audit committee member. The agreement is reached. Again, you happy to move, Councillor? Councillor Natoli, seconder, please. Councillor Hungerford. Would you like to open, Councillor?
Mr Mayor, I just want to pay a big thanks to with them when I was involved with Maroochy Shire, so I had a long association with them. But the two new ones that we got, and then later on agreed to add another one, have been incredible. Their contribution to the process and their thoroughness, and they don't miss anything. And all three have got different qualities that bring about a unified comfort of knowing that, you know, they're there, they're applying their trade, their ability to be able to delve into and ask the right questions. So I'm just really pleased with the with what they've done, and obviously I support the recommendation. That recommendation and the name of the next representative is confidential, and I can't release that. But I'm comfortable that our processes have been able to find really high quality, independent audit committee representatives have been outstanding.
Thank you. No further speakers? No need to close. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Yes, thank you. Okay. Councillors, there are no notices of motion. Wonderful extension of your preparedness. And there are no petitions. So on that note, at 12:46, I declare the meeting closed. Wish you a safe and prosperous afternoon. Thank you very much.